Okay, we'll get underway. Miss Spanish Fork's here tonight. Great. How you doing? Thanks for joining us in the City Council chambers tonight. Welcome to City Council meeting on, what's today, April what?
18th.
The 18th, 2023. Kind of a big deal today. It's the last council meeting. I see a council member in here. Last council meeting in these chambers. We've got some new chambers that are just being completed, and so our next council meeting in May will be in a great new place that can house a lot more residents and participants. So we're really excited about that. But thank you for joining us here tonight in person and on TV and the internet. We'll get things started like we always do with an inspirational thought and a prayer, and then Councilman Euler has that. Following that, Councilwoman Beck will lead us in the pledge.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor. We've invited Joshua Harding, who's a local pastor here in Spanish Fork, to get up and maybe introduce yourself a little bit and then give us the thought and prayer.
My name is Joshua Harding. I'm pastor of a brand new church coming to town, Aspen Grove Bible Church. We start services in June. It's an honor to be here with you tonight and open the meeting with prayer. Before I pray, I do want to just offer a word of encouragement to our council members. The Bible says, "Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." The message is simple. When you're doing good work, there is the tendency to get tired. It's going to be hard. It's going to be exhausting. But there's a reward for perseverance. And as our city council, you are doing fantastic work in our community. But you're also making a great sacrifice as you juggle jobs and families and public service. And so I just want to encourage all of you to keep on doing the good work you're doing. At least part of the reward for that is the wonderful community that we live in, a community that cares for each other, helps each other, encourages one another. So thank you for your service. Keep fighting the good fight. A brief word for the rest of us is, may we support and encourage these men and women who are working so hard on our behalf to better our community. Let us pray. Father, I come before you tonight with a heart of gratitude for all the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us. I thank you for being a God of love who is with us now in this very room. You've promised to never leave or forsake your own. I thank you tonight for these, your servants, our mayor, our city manager, our city staff, our city council members. Thank you for their service and for their sacrifice and for their dedication to our community. I ask tonight that you would bless them and their families and their work, protect them and keep them safe. Give them your wisdom as they seek to lead our community and make decisions that will impact all of us. I ask tonight, Father, that you would bless this meeting with unity of heart and purpose, even when there may be diversity of desires and opinion. May tonight's meeting be profitable, informative, beneficial to all, and even an encouragement to those who are watching and listening. Finally, I ask that with your guidance and direction, we might all work together to see our community grow and develop and continue to be one of the best places in all the world to live. I pray all these things in the precious and holy name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Harding.
I invite you to stand and repeat the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Beck. Thank you, Pastor Harding. Okay, that takes us to item C, Miss Spanish Fork 22-23 farewell. Boy, this is a tough one. Councilwoman Beck was just talking to me the other day about some upcoming Miss Spanish Fork stuff, and she said it in a way not even to not to gratify you or anything, but just said she's going to be one of the best Miss Spanish Forks we've had.
She's been a go-doer.
So no pressure as you finish out your first few weeks.
I know. I mean, there's a bit of pressure now. Thanks for that, you guys. But I just have a couple things that I'd like to share with you guys. So first of all, I want to say thank you for being willing to partner with the Miss America organization to make this program possible and for supporting girls with a dream like mine. I have spent almost 2,000 hours of service as your Miss Spanish Fork, and that doesn't include the parades and the ribbon cuttings and other city events. In that 2,000 hours of service, I have seen so many things to be proud of in Spanish Fork. I visited all 9 elementary schools and could not be more proud of the response that I got from the students when it came to my Dare to Love challenge. I am so proud of the city's desire to be more inclusive and incorporate ASL into city events. I am so proud of you guys and the love that you show to your citizens, like when you gave Valentines to the students in Spanish Fork. That was so cute. And I was like, that's my city council. I am so proud of the work that I've done with Intermountain Hospital in creating the first ever Girls' Night Out. And I am so proud of the community that we are for each other. Spanish Fork is truly a place to be proud of, and I believe that. In Utah, personal relationships are on the decline, and that threatens our families and our communities. As I prepare to crown a new Miss Spanish Fork, it is my hope that we all continue to look outside of ourselves at the feelings of others, to value the least among us, and to embrace differences. As we grow and progress as a city, we need to make personal relationships a priority. Making personal relationships should be a goal of the city of Pride and Progress. I would just like to thank you for your support once again, and it has been my honor to work beside you.
Thank you, Grace.
Thanks, Grace.
In my council comments, I was going to talk about the pageant next weekend. Will
Yes.
you just share the details with everyone?
Yeah, so it is April 29th. It starts at 7 p.m. at Maple Mountain High School. We have 5 incredible candidates. They will all do amazing, and it would just be really great if those girls could have all the support that they possibly could from the city.
Okay, and then in June, you will go on to vie for the crown of Miss Utah. Tell us a little bit about how that's going.
Yeah, so it's June 6th through the 10th. We are kind of in the last few moments. I've turned in all my paperwork, and so we're just finishing those little details that will make it all come together. I am in the first group, so if you want to come see my talent, it's the first night of competition. So you should stop by the Capitol Theater in Salt Lake City and say hi to me. Just saying.
Grace, I do want to thank you for all that you have done. I think in anything where we give our heart and soul, when it comes to an end, we want to look back and think, I've truly given it my all, that I can leave happy. You're going to be sad, but leave happy that you had the opportunity to do this. And I really believe that you've done that. You're going to leave. You can pat yourself on the back. You've done a fabulous job representing the city of Spanish Fork.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I just want to say real quick, this was my first year on council, so I've not experienced other Miss Spanish Forks, but what impressed me about Grace is you showed up not only at city events, but you were at a lot of the chamber events and supporting our local businesses as well, which I thought was very, very cool.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything for Grace?
Don't be shy. Come on.
I know Grace did ask if she could get a photo.
Yes.
So
Please.
do you want to come up here or do you want to stand right
I
here?
can stand in the front if
Okay.
that's just less of a hassle for everyone.
We'll come right here behind you.
So glad I wore a suit.
Jordan, Jordan's going to move that little stand.
The lighting is good.
Thank you, Grace.
So much, Grace. Good job. Yeah, I will tell you, last year, Councilwoman Beck put out an invite to say, hey, who can help with some mock interviews for Miss Spanish Fork? And I came in here, and how many girls were there?
There were 10 last year?
There were 8.
8, okay.
And Grace is one of them. Very impressive field of competition that you were in. I mean, I was blown away. by all those young women. But you stood out, and then that night of the competition, Councilwoman Beck reminded me that I had to get my butt up to Maple Mountain High School and watch these young women, and your talent, fantastic. I mean, every facet of it, but moving and touching, and just great job. And you've represented the home of Pride and Progress very, very well. So thank you. Thanks. Okay. Let's see. That takes us to item number 4 on the agenda, the public comment section of City Council meeting. So this is for general public comments. If something's on the agenda that you're here to speak to that's a public hearing, you can wait till that comes up later in the agenda. But anybody that would like to address the mayor or council in public comment is certainly welcome to come up here and do so.
I'll do that.
Yes. We'll take a former councilwoman
Yes.
anytime. Come and
Thank
visit
you.
us. Yes.
I think I know all of you with the exception of one young man. Yes, my name is Lil Shepard, and I actually served on the council in my early 40s, and now I'm in my early 70s. So it's been a while, but I have to tell you that I keep my eye on you guys, and I have been doing that for a long time. And I love that the council works with our amazing city staff, with our state staff, but most important with the citizens, right? That's what we're all about, are the citizens. That's why you're here. That's why the city employees are here. I had the fortune to work with Mayor Del Barney, and he was in his early 70s, way back then, and I loved his wisdom. And I'll just tell you one short story. A guy came in, he was a contractor, builder, and he wanted a right-of-way. It was on some property, some farmland, and another guy was here and said, well, I would like a right-of-way through your property. And he didn't want to give it, but he wanted someone else's. And so what happened was Mayor Barney very nicely, politely said, well, you know, I think you ought to go home, think about this whole situation, and when you know what you're going to do, the right thing, then you can come back. And it was just a great thing because we all have our own agendas, but when we're in these positions, our agenda becomes everyone's agenda to make sure that we're all treated fairly, politely, correctly. I loved your father, Kevin. He was just an amazing city manager, and all of the staff. So I am happy to see that you get a new chamber. So just make sure you always remember and pass it on as you leave office that it's the citizens that really matter. But it's also the citizens that need to get involved and volunteer and help and sit where you're sitting today. So thank you for allowing me to come. In 2 weeks, I'll be out of the country. So have a great ribbon cutting, and I'll come and look at your new space. But congratulations to what you're doing. Good job.
Thank you, Lil.
Do you have any questions?
Did Councilman Gordon Commissioner Gordon didn't give you a poem to read to us tonight?
No, thank goodness. Might have not been rated correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
He did call me right before this and said he didn't have time for the poem.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think it's going to be delivered the next meeting,
Next
right?
time.
Oh, boy. Okay, I'll be
Bill,
prepared.
thank you for your years of service. I know in
Thank you.
2015, when I was deciding whether or not it was time for me to run, I called and asked you, and you had many, many good things to say about this opportunity. And you were the last city council woman
Yes.
and it had been 15 years. And so, thank you.
Where's
thank
that
you
time
for your
gone?
example.
You're welcome. Let's get some more ladies up there, too.
There
All
you
right,
go.
thank you.
Yep. Yeah, I would say I was on doing an interview just before this, and it was a television station, an international one, and they mentioned, well, you know, we've heard there's great things going on in Spanish Fork. How did it happen? And I said, well, people 20, 25 years ago that were up here and in the city made some good decisions. So good job, Lil. Anybody else from the public that would like to address the mayor and council?
Be careful.
This guy.
Be careful what we ask for.
I'll save you some time.
Dave, can you get the 3 minute,
3 minute clock.
3 minute clock?
Yeah, get the 3 minute clock, because you know I was a stickler about that. And I was always on time with our meeting started.
I know. I was already.
You know, shoot, I leave for 6 months, and what happens?
Downhill.
Anyway, Steve Leifson, and I sat up there for 16 years, so it's been a long time. And I have a Del Barney story. Del called me up and he said, Steve, I need you to run for city council. And I said, gee, Del, I don't know if I could stand to have that many people hate me. And he said, you get used to it. And that wasn't the case. We have a great city and a great people, and it was an honor and a privilege to serve. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I know you all, and you've done a great job. It's really fun to be involved with the city and to see it grow and the things that we have here for everybody. And just like Lil said, you know, we all need to get involved. And that's how we become a hometown, is everybody get involved, whether it's coaching Little League or being part of the celebrations or running for council or mayor. There's so many things that we can do to make this a great city. Just go along and pick up trash, plant flowers, all those things. And I love Spanish Fork. I love the service that you guys have given, and you've done well. And I know you'll continue to do well. And I shout out to our staff. We've got some of the best employees and staff in the country. And I appreciate each one of you. Thanks a lot. Even you, Shane.
I was going to ask some questions, but I guess I won't.
No
way. No way.
Because, you know, you and I can go outside and talk about those.
Yeah, it's probably best. Gerald Chappell. I'm really the old timer of the group here. I served from 1984 to 1995, and I went to school in this building from kindergarten to third grade. And then the Brockbank School was built and went there. But this has always been a special building to me. One of our first projects was to find a new place for our city council and the staff to house. And many of you might remember the old Nebo School District building that was between the Thurber and the church. We met there. One of my pleasant memories of that was one of our council members, some of you may remember Paige Harrison. During the course of our meeting, a mouse ran across the floor and ran right up Paige's pant leg. It was, and he grabbed it and hung on for dear life. And so that was a kind of building it was. But it was a fun project to see this building done. I think it was completed in 1985, and it's served well. I got about a 30-minute talk here, but just quickly some of the things that happened. Of course, my first year on the council was the Thistle Dam and the flooding. And I remember I live on Mitchell Drive, and Third West is actually where the old river, before the river was diverted, that's where Spanish Fork River went. And they told us that if this Thistle Dam collapsed, we would have a 10-foot wall of water come down Third West. And so it was really a nerve-wracking time, but things turned out well. Some of you may remember the Main Street beautification. That was with Mayor Hallam. First mayor I served with was Enoch Ludlow, and then with Murray Huff. Swimming pool was built back in the early 90s. Festival of Lights. That was a fun project. And the I'll end with this. One of the unique experiences I had was when the reservoir, the 3 million gallon, is that Crab Creek? Is that what that's called? Mm-hmm. Well, before it was filled up, Richard Heap, who was the city manager, invited me and a media representative from the Herald, and we went up there before it was filled, walked across this thin plank, and we took the ladder down into the bottom of the reservoir. That was a pretty unique experience, and I was very glad to get out of there safely. But we appreciate what you do. And it's funny, I was looking through some of my own notes. One of the big problems we had in the late 80s was people rodding Main. The Main Street's too busy to rod now, but it was a big problem.
That was fun, though.
But I appreciate the invite and looking forward to seeing your new facilities. Keep up the good work.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you so
Chappell.
much.
Thank you.
I was just telling someone a story about Rod and Main. What an idiot.
You were why we had to probably pass that ordinance,
I
Shane.
put 100 miles on that
Yeah.
road one night.
Yeah.
I believe it.
It's terrible.
Anyone else?
It's fun.
The Mayor Leifson's saying you got to come up. All right. You want to come up and share a memory about these council chambers?
I'm Myling Hales. I served on the city council from 76 to 84. And a lot of experiences. You should have been around, Stacy, in the 50s. It was really rotting Main then. It was a fun experience. It was during the flood, the Thistle flood, that we got real, what do you call it? We got a real experience with the flooding situation. But I can also remember the floods of 49 and the ones of 50s too. And that's when the whole river bottoms was underwater. And the fellow that lived, I think his name was Wilcox, where the old red barn was out by the river, they had a boat that went from Main Street to his front door. So, yeah, it's a lot of experiences and fun times. I was probably the only councilman that lost and won on the second term. I lost by 11 votes. And then when they canvassed the votes, well, I ended up winning with 26. So it was probably the only recount Spanish Fork's ever had. But saw a lot of growth, in the city. I hate what it's become for the traffic, but we all can share that, I guess. But anyhow, it was great experiences. I remember that we put the superintendent. We put a wind anemometer up there early to see what potential it had. And Bob Disbrow and I took the results down to the where they had those wind farms on the Altamont Ridge in California, and they were amazed at the potential. They said we only had a windy season, and make theirs pay, and they were astounded at how much we could. But when you put the pencil to everything, it just didn't seem feasible at the time because there wasn't the large generators there were there. But But anyhow, it was an experience, and I don't know what else. But thank you.
Thank you for coming, Myling. We appreciate you, Mr. Hales.
Sounds to me like we are dealing with very similar things right now than we were back in the 70s, from traffic growth, the people, the volunteers, the flooding. It's all very similar. It may look a little different, but I think it's just different people sitting up here trying to figure it out. So thank you, each one of you, for figuring it out and helping us look so good up here. Like Mayor said, often we say it's the people that served before us. We don't want to take credit because it was all of you. So thank you.
Most of them.
Most of them.
You read into that any way you want.
Tara, don't forget how important. I mean, Mr. Hales isn't a councilman unless they recount that. That's pretty interesting, huh? It's pretty interesting. Anyone else from the public? Okay, thank you all. Like Stacy touched on, the council chambers, May 2nd is, I think, our first council meeting over there. And yes, any of you council members and mayors that can join us, we'll be sending out some more formal invitations for that. But we want as big a picture as we can in the new council chambers, where we can fit everybody a little bit better, and your family and stuff as well, as we honor all of you in that new space. So if you're in town, Lil, we're sorry we'll miss you, but all of you, this is a public call to those council members and mayors that watch this every night, right? They're one of the millions, Mayor Leifson. That please join us in a couple of weeks in those new council chambers. We want to honor you and get a picture. So, thank you. Okay, that takes us to council comments. We'll start on this end tonight. We'll start with Councilman Euler and work this way.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Not a lot tonight. A couple of weeks back, we had a great Easter lunch down at the Senior Center. Had a good turnout for that. Then a few days ago, a few of us had the opportunity to go to the Diamond Fork Middle School and present to some 6th graders and talk about a lot of things going on in the community, answer a lot of questions. I think the best question I got, and I shared this with the council, we had students ask about the rec center that's being built and wanted details about entrances and how many people and this and that and the senior center. And I said, well, the seniors are going to have, per request, kind of an entrance off the back that they'll be able to access the senior center from. And one young man says to me, don't you find it maybe a little discriminatory that you're asking the seniors to come in the back? And I thought, wow, this is an astute young man. Needless to say, the teacher pulled him out and sent him to the principal's office for that question. I think that's where he went. I don't know. But
he wasn't there?
He wasn't there. He left. But
seniors can come in any door they want in the rec center, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then final thing for me, Mayor, yesterday we had our RAP tax grant review, which is an opportunity for members of the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Committee area to submit applications each year to try and receive some of our RAP tax funds for different programs. We had 15 applications this year, which is, I think, the most we've ever received. And we were able to fund just about all of the requests that were submitted, or we will be able to. We haven't finalized that yet, but quite a few programs in the community that were able to help with these RAP taxes that we all contribute to. So pretty neat thing. That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilman Euler. Councilman Marshall.
I'll make it quick as well. Last Thursday, I had the opportunity to fill in for Mike, or the mayor, at Mountain Lands Regional Meeting. We approved the long-range transportation plan, which is pretty cool. It's a major event in our county every 4 years. I think it's important that one of us, if Mike can't make it or I can't make it, whoever, we need someone there every night. It's important to make sure that we're Spanish Fork representative. I think Jared is on. Are you the chair of the TAC? Vice chair of the TAC. So Spanish Fork is well represented as long as we're there to help with the vote. think we can do some good things over there. So I appreciate your service, Chair. It's not an easy committee to be a chair of. He grins and bears it. When was our legislative breakfast? Last week?
Last Monday.
Last Monday, we had a chance to sit down with our representatives both in the Senate and the House and talk about how the session went. Great conversation. We talked about what they did and what we hope for them to do next year. It's sort of my issues are always transportation related. I'm not sure why that happens, but it just so happens. And I get a chance every chance I get. I want to tug on them about extending Front Runner down to Spanish Fork and allowing us to do some creative things with land use around that area. So, and then finally, I had a chance to go to the Republican convention this week. That aside, what I wanted to talk about when I was there, some citizens were talking about their displeasure about our pickleball courts and its congestion on a certain day of the week. As we've all talked about, there's a university on just north of us that floods our pickleball courts. We need to find a solution to that. Having our citizens not being able to use that, something they invested in, is not the right thing. We need to figure out a way to encourage them to go somewhere else, I guess, might be the best way to say it. But when Dell gets back, I think it'd be a good chance for us to sit down and talk about what can we do. We have, in almost every program we have a citizen fee and we have a non-citizen fee, except for this. It's very open to the public, but we need to make sure our citizens have a chance to use those pickleball carts. So when Dell gets here, we'll have a chance to talk. But those are my few things. I was certainly impressed, and I don't know why this didn't cross my mind until Lil and Gerald and Steve and Mr. Hells gets up and talks about their service and the amount of conversation that's passed across this desk over the last 30, 40 years is just amazing. I think you're right, Stacy. It is the same issues, and yet we still talk about them, but we're tackle them in a way that allows us to continue to talk about them. Like our city is still here, it's still vibrant, so we're getting them right. I think history has shown we're getting them right. It's a great place to live, but just the amount of history that's happened across this desk is it's hard to get your head around. And to be a part of it is it's almost surreal.
Yeah, incredible.
That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Marshall. Councilwoman Beck.
The middle school, the legislative breakfast, Miss Spanish Fork, those were all on my list. The other thing was I had the opportunity to go down to the Fiesta Days Rodeo Queen contest, and this year they did an impromptu interview, and I was able to do that with them. And at the end, they crowned the new royalty. The queen is Bailey McKay. First attendant is Miriam Brophy, and second attendant is Riley Voorhees. And so it was just really fun. It was about a 5-hour process to ride horses, do horsemanship, interviews, all of that. It was really fun to be a part of that.
They didn't know they were going to be interviewed prior to this?
Yes, they did.
Oh, okay.
But it was impromptu, as in the past, they were able to come with a speech prepared. And
you just asked questions?
I just asked some questions.
Very cool.
So it was a fun new way to go. So that's all I have.
That's it? Yep. Okay. Councilman Argyle.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. So first of all, met with the Veterans Council. They've got a few things coming up. Of course, Memorial Day's coming up, and they'll be looking forward to doing that and extending a request for help as they place our Flanders fields and place the flags. And then after Memorial Day, or during Memorial Day, they'll have their celebration, and then after we'll take the flags down. We always get such an awesome group of people to help us get those flags up, and it's such an awesome sight when the wind blows across those flags of those veterans who have served our country and passed away. It's an opportunity to recognize them. Also, the Freedom Walk is coming. This is something that the Veterans Council does, or the veterans are Legion and VFW. Give an opportunity for fifth graders in our community to go walk and meet some of those veterans who have served, get a chance to talk with them, hear some of their experiences that they've served. They talked about World War II, and we're getting fewer and fewer veterans left because many of them are passing away in age, and I think we're under 100 in our community that are left. A couple of them are still pretty active and able to tell some of those stories. Anyway, it's a great opportunity for those fifth graders, and some more information will be coming. The Rotary is having their golf tournament on May 10th coming up. I think they still have a few slots if you want to put together a foursome and come join them. I know they have some awesome prizes and things that come forth with that. So I had an opportunity to invite some of our past mayor and council. I just want to say, as I've had an opportunity to visit with a couple of them, one of them, probably the oldest one, that's Blair Hamilton, 92, still remembers when he served. Sharp mind, good to visit with him and some of these councils. When I think about and Myling Hales and Gerald and also Steve Leifson admitted some of those things. Those guys were looking to the future. Some of the things that they did are still benefiting this community. Forward thinking, what a great thing to do, and I've tried to keep that in my mind as I've served to this community. This building, as we move from this building, two of my friends went to school in this building. I didn't come here because I got moved around because I was kind of a brat, so I didn't get a chance to stay in a couple of schools. But they were here in this school many years ago, and they always was proud that it was our Spanish Fork City office. Both of them have since passed away, but they were always proud that our city survived in this little building. We remodeled it quite extensively when we did this in '85. As Gerald, he moved into it and he told me about that meeting in this little building. He said we were shoulder to shoulder sitting each one of the council, and we could get about 10 people in the room. So if Mr. Harris got a mouse up, it was probably a pretty good dance because it probably was pretty crowded. Gerald's left, but I would like to make a comment. One of the things that was pretty unique when we hired our new city manager, Seth Perrins, and we challenged him to get to know the employees, and he took that challenge to heart and met with every one of the employees. When he got done, he reported back to us that we had made a huge mistake by outlawing rotting on Main. Because he said 3/4 of the people that I interviewed met their spouses on Main Street. And that was so awesome to hear, because I didn't know that, but most of us did. We drove cars that only turned left, of course. We had to get rid of some of those cars when they got rid of that. I was not a real fan of Main Street, but my wife was. If I wanted to find her, she was on Main Street. So, and Myling saying back in the 50s, Bush, they were probably racing on Main Street rather than just circling. I would probably be amiss. I hope you know that I have a great respect for our founding fathers of this country. And I was just reading recently Thomas Jefferson. He was our third president. He come to office in 1800. Before that, he was the vice president. And during his run, as I was reviewing that, Democrats and the Republicans were divided. And I know we've probably heard that before, but that was 200 years ago. And they were arguing, and they were doing some bad things to try to get, they didn't want him in office. He was a Republican. He represented the Republicans. He was conservative. And to listen to some of the things that took place in 1800 was pretty interesting. He, of course, won. He had a tie with Raymond Burr, and that was decided by the House of Representatives, and he came forth and became our third president of the United States. It was interesting to know his family didn't want to live with him, so he served 2 terms in Washington and pretty much lived in a house by himself. but he loved this country. He was, of course, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. He was a big part of that. He was the founder of that. And he loved this country. Him and George Washington and John Adams were best of friends. They had their times, they had their arguments because they had different opinions about what this country was to be. As the ground was being set for this country, some of those things that came forth at that time were of course amazing and set the foundation for our Constitution, which we still live by. And I'm grateful for those founding fathers. They sacrificed more than we can imagine. And I know many of them had regular lives and that, but they fought in wars. They had many confrontations with their leaders and their friends, and they remained steadfast and put the foundation for this country. We still have a Constitution that we live by, and this country is still the greatest country in the world. And that Constitution and those founding fathers were what brought that forth, and I'm grateful for those that served. And they served a long time, too, so some of us hasn't served quite that long. Anyway, grateful for those, and grateful for those past mayor and council who took the time and the effort. As he said, it takes a little juggling of your job. It takes a little juggling of your time to be here, to be to these board meetings. Somebody asked me, and this last March and coming April has been so busy. And I'll be glad when this conference is that we're coming up and I can relax and settle down a little bit and do a few things just around the house even as summer comes on. So thank you for attending our meeting. We thank you for watching our meeting. We're grateful. The next time we come online, there'll probably be 2 million people watching us, and we'll have much more room and space. And when you get the opportunity to, if you haven't, come and see this library. It is beautiful inside and is going to bring such a great thing to this community for our children, the reading programs, and what Scott Aylett does for this library and the space that he's going to have now to do this. We are pleased with what this has taken place, and it's happened in our time frame, and I am excited about the library and to have a new place to meet. So thank you for your vote in that, and I promise you that if you get the opportunity to go see that, you'll be well pleased with what will go on in our new library hall. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Argyle. Councilman Cardin.
Thank you, Mayor. This week I was able to attend our Chamber board meeting. Chamber is doing really well. A lot of things happening there, and Kathleen is currently in Washington, D.C. with the Utah Valley Chamber, and so she asked me to share a few things. This Thursday at noon will be the noon networking lunch at Sophos, which is down on Main. So upstairs they have a building. They'll be talking about some emergency preparedness things, specifically for businesses. There's a ribbon cutting for Quick Quack on April 25th, the one up on Highway 6 and Spanish Fork Parkway. That's at 4:30 p.m. There's also a ribbon cutting, and I don't know how to say the name of this, Stacy, so I'm going to lean on you. The Event Center on Main Street.
Is it Avani?
Avani, there you go.
Yeah, is it?
Okay.
Going into the old Reams building, right?
Yep, that's the one at 5 p.m. on the 27th. I just didn't want to say it incorrectly.
5:30, I think.
5:30. 5:30.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, 5:30 is what it says. I read it wrong.
Is it 5? Okay.
And then on the 28th, there's a ribbon cutting for Mike Mendenhall's new Edward Jones office. Hope you know that that's happening.
Is that happening?
I guess so.
Better not take the day off.
Yep. Don't forget about that one. And then that same Saturday, obviously we know that the Spanish Fork Library will be, that ribbon cutting will be happening that Saturday at 9:30, and she had that on here. And then one last thing from her is on May 2nd, the business of the month this month is Venue Sports Cards at 12 p.m. That's over there on Express Lane. So if you need some sports memorabilia, that's a great place for that. Next, Arts Council. I know Shane has been waiting for the day for callbacks from Matilda, and that will be this weekend. And they'll be announcing on Sunday. Oh, he didn't get a callback. So Sunday evening will be the announcement online of who gets what parts. Also, one thing that's happening that's a pretty big deal in the city is the Youth Arts Festival. Registration starts on the 3rd. Classes are now up online, so figure out what classes you want and make sure you sign up early because they do fill up quickly. So, and then with the airport board, they hold a free breakfast the 3rd Saturday of the month from 9 to 11 a.m. in hangar number 6. It's open to everyone, so they encourage anyone to come. They do have donations that go to the Gail Halverson Foundation, but every 3rd Saturday from 9 to 11, and that's something that's ongoing. So go take part of that. The airport is such a great asset of our city that a lot of people don't know about, unfortunately. And then the last thing that I have, Mayor, is this week I was able to participate in 2 different events where I was able to talk with the middle school kids and then also to do mock interviews for those that are going to be participating in Miss Spanish Fork next week. One thing that I took away from that is the challenges that our youth face are real, and they stink, for lack of better words. But the youth that we have in our community are resilient. They work hard together to try to overcome those. And so one thing that I recognize from what I was able to participate in is the second part is they listen to their parents, even though sometimes we don't think they're listening. And I think that's refreshing sometimes to know that they're listening, but also that makes sure we take time to tell them that they're loved, that they're cared for. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Cardin. Thank you, all you council members. It takes a lot of time for you to be on your committees and fulfill those roles in a good and effective way for the citizens. But I'm telling you, Spanish Fork citizens, your council members are attending those meetings, and they're representing you and your interests, your city, very professional and very well. So thank you all for that time. I know it takes time away from your families and your businesses. I failed to mention earlier that you see some of our staff is absent today. We've got Seth and Tyler and Nick and Nate. I don't know who else. Is that about it that's at a conference? So we're thankful that they're at doing their duties at a conference. They're one of the millions watching over SFCN as well. Some of the meetings I've attended the last couple of weeks, Seth and I were able to meet with Union Pacific Railroad with some other mayors, council members from other cities, and state legislators. It was a good, productive meeting. Again, I can't emphasize enough. It's been discussed here before by everyone, including ourselves. Sometimes the frustration of traffic, east-west flow, north-south flow, but if you're looking anywhere in Spanish Fork, we do have railroads to deal with. We have a freeway and a highway, but there's also railroads. And so Union Pacific is a partner there that we do have to deal with whenever we're talking about crossings. The meeting was very productive. Met with the actual CEO of one of the largest corporations, I think, in the United States, Union Pacific, and the CEO was there. We were very blunt with our discussions with him. Seth was probably a little more blunt than the mayor was blunt, but discussions of some of our challenges, but also some of our synergy with the railroad. So we appreciated their time. I will tell you just a quick story there where Seth was asking a particular question about some of the struggles we have of some railroad crossings here in town. And the CEO stopped and just said, okay, and some of his people, employees were in the audience as well. And he says, all right, listen, I'm making policy right now. This is policy. And he made some policy changes there. And that was because Seth was asking some pretty direct questions to him. The gentleman sitting next to me was an employee of the company, and he leaned over to me after that and said, hey, see if your city manager can ask about employee pay. Maybe there will be a policy change there. It's kind of a lighthearted moment, but it was, I'm just telling you, I can't reiterate enough, you've already heard it tonight, but the staff of our city represents us well, ask tough questions, and are in the room when things need to be discussed. Mentioned it already a little bit, but was with the media today discussing the issue of water in the state of Utah. They picked Spanish Fork to discuss this. This is an international media organization. But when they came to the state of Utah, they asked who's doing effective things with water conservation. They were told Spanish Fork. So they wanted to come talk to us. Met them up at the reservoir with some other city staff members up there just before this meeting. It wasn't the best day to be meeting up on the bench there, but we discussed again some of those decisions, Lil, that you referenced of what set us up today for success in water conservation. Very impressed. You've also seen shared on social media. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but we appreciate the Lieutenant Governor being with us in lockstep of discussing what's coming in the next few weeks is going to be an event in Spanish Fork. Jared's prepared to discuss a little bit more and kind of have that minute every council meeting where we're discussing what the river looks like and what the snowpack looks like. We know a lot of residents are concerned, and we want to detail what we're trying to do to be effective with our county and state partners in the river to handle what's coming in the next few weeks. Before I hand it over to Jared for that, it's already been touched on the history of this room. Feels like I should say something since we're going to be over in a new room next time. Some of my first meetings as an elected member was with Dave Euler, our city manager, being here, and some others. But the meetings I came to before that were with the Chamber of Commerce. And back then, it wasn't just the director had to come, but they said, Jesse, you did this good when you were the president. You were there. And Stacy, I remember you coming to these meetings as well. And so I'm just sitting back there trying to learn what's going on in the city and report back to businesses about what's happening. And so that was some good times, a lot of learning stuff. Being involved in just listening to what was being discussed up here. Probably the most memorable is I thought, what's the most memorable times in here? Mayor Leifson was out of town on business for the city and said, Mike, you got to run the meeting. It was around Fiesta Days. Nobody gave me a heads up that Steve Money, our Mr. Rodeo, would be riding a horse in here to welcome Fiesta Days. And so, sure enough, that door whips open, and here comes a horse in here. And
really?
Oh, geez, I'm going to be in trouble. And so there's.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's some television. Something else.
I want to see your face.
Find it.
Go find it.
Yeah, it was a lot of good memories. But I think, Lil, you touched on something that stands out with me the most of the history of this room, is that the differences of opinion. When people ask, well, how are you doing at Spanish Fork? And we're all going to be at some city conferences later this week and upcoming where people really do ask us, hey, we hear things are going right in Spanish Fork. And I think a lot of it is just that we don't forget the humanity when we're discussing differences. Differences of opinion are what makes the country great, what makes this city great, what makes democracy great, our republic great, is that we can have different ideas, we can discuss them respectfully, debate when we need to, and then a lot of that stuff is figured out, outside of here, out in a hallway, out on a farm, out on a road, and those issues are discussed respectfully. I was in some training for my day job a couple of weeks ago. We had to read a book, and I know Stacy's got the book club, got me beat on the book club. I don't know, you guys have probably already read 100.
I'm just happy to hear that you've read.
Books. I read a book, Stacy. So I should be included in the book club now. but the book they assigned us to read, we had to read. Read.
Do you want me to read that?
Yeah, no, I'll read it. I've got it. They made us give a presentation on what we read. That's what I was going for, and it made me think of kind of again the last meeting here, but all the history that's taken place in here. It said, many are accustomed to hold a sword of the First Amendment in one hand and a shield called the Fifth in the other, all the while forgetting that to do so is to deem human relations a battlefield. And I think we all hold sacred the First and Fifth Amendments, but when we're using those against each other all the time, our human relations don't have to be a battlefield. It also said, when we treat man as he is, we make him worse than he is. And when we treat man as he could be, we make him what he should be. So I think if we think of that in our interactions, in our daily lives, but especially as we discuss differences in local government, this isn't the federal government. This is a different level of government. We're talking about fixing potholes and making sure roads are taken care of and making sure economic growth is something, and developing and maintaining and growing that quality of life in the home of Pride and Progress. And I think as we remember those human interactions, whether it's in this room or a much larger and bigger room next door to fit more of us in it, we just need to remember we can be different. While the world and while our nation sometimes is talking past each other, we've got to talk to each other and treat people as they could be, and as not maybe as we see them through our lens. So I know we'll do that. I know we've exhibited to do that, and we'll continue to do that in these discussions. So that's what I remember about this place here, and I'm excited that we get to do that with a lot more people in the new space over there. So please join us. You'll see more released about that. But next Saturday, will be a ribbon cutting where the whole community is invited. Be there and celebrate. Not just, obviously, the council chambers is just a small piece of it, but that whole library is just going to be a shining star in our city and a gathering place for everybody. So please join us if you can at 10:30?
9:30.
9:30 a.m. You're going to have to set your alarm clock on a weekend, Shane. Nope. So join us if you can. Okay. Anything else? Any other council comments we missed? Okay. That'll move us on to the end of my council comments then, where Mr. Jared Johnson will give us an update. We call this the RAFT meeting, and now I can't remember what it stands for, Jared. River
Action. I can't remember either.
River Anti-Flooding.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, that's the River Anti-Flooding Team. Good job. Yeah.
Forgot what the T was.
Meets twice a week.
So we meet twice a week. Just give you an update. This is a forecast of what we see that's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Towards the end of the month, things are cooling down. You've seen that out there. So the river flows will come down. We've reached about 800, just over 800 CFS. We need more than that to come down at this time. And cooling down's, it's helping us so we can get the river clean because we're continuing to put the levees in. We've got 4 crews in removing trees, debris, sandbars, armoring the river, including our crews. We've got our city crews and then 3 other crews. But right now we still have 27 inches of water on the mountain. And in 83 and 84 we had just right around 25. So we still have the amount of water we had in 83 and 84 up there. And so we're watching it really close. We meet twice a week. I think we'll have a lot better update come May 2nd. We'll have the crews probably done. Everybody will be out of the river and the water will be coming. Probably, you can see that it gets back up to about 1,100 CFS, but we need to get up about 1,500 to get the water off the mountain.
Jared, what's the level, the flow that it's safe to work in? Is it 500, 400?
We're working in it right now, and it's got up to 800 CFS, but that's usually at night. But if you're watching the river right now, we're usually right about 500, 600 CFS. If you get up anywhere above 1,000, it gets a little dangerous, and we'll probably still be in there working on the banks, but I'd keep everybody else away from it.
Right. You said that we want to be around 1,500. What is the max that our river can hold?
It depends on where we're at in the river, but we're working around the golf course is our choke point. It's around 2,000 CFS. The rest of it's higher. There's been a lot of speculation on how much water we had in 83. I know the diversion structure is built for 5,000 CFS that we built for the city dam. And they had their numbers. I don't know if it's correct, but they figured they had to build above 4,600 CFS. And Bruce and your dad built that. So,
Jared, how are you identifying the sandbars that you're working on? Is it just ones that you have access to, ones that you can get to?
no, we've got Bowen and Collins helping us, Jamie Chappell. We've had a lot of past people that have helped us with the river go up and identify areas of what they think need to come out. We've got the state down there. It's the Bowen and Collins mostly, our professionals. Jamie, just a past experience. We had a hard time getting permits. We were waiting on it. We're now getting the permits as actively as we need them. So it's more take a picture, submit the permit, and we're approved. So.
And what are the city's plans for each of the bridges that cross the river? What are we looking at there?
We'll have a piece of equipment at each bridge, and we're working with UDOT, Utah County. UDOT's already got a track go down at their bridge on I-15, but we'll make sure that we have a piece of equipment at every bridge. And we've already contracted with 3 different contractors that will supply us equipment. They're already in the river. And then Kenny Sang's our backup, and Tyler said he'll have equipment trucks just ready 5, I guess what you call it.
Any other questions for Jared? Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead.
Just one more possibly. I've had quite a few, not quite a few. Sandbags is the question that I keep getting, so maybe we can address how do we answer that to our residents, what our plan is with sandbags.
So we've got the sandbags and the sand, and we're going to deploy the sandbags as a need. So when we need the sandbags, we'll start sending them there. And so instead of stockpiling in areas that might not be effective, we'll watch the areas. I mean, the river's not going to rise as fast as, it'll rise fast, but we'll be ahead of it. And then we can get the sandbags and the sand in the proper location. And they get the community to come out and help.
So news to get people out, just have people watching the city's Facebook page.
We'll reach out to Chris's plans to reach out to every stake president along the river.
I'm assuming we'll deploy the text messaging program.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, the important thing to know about, and Lieutenant Governor Henderson said this in the video, if you search on the website, you can see SpanishFork.org/flood. You can see those videos, but you'll also be able to see all this data is accessible data to the public, just like it's accessible to us. And the difference between communities can be pretty drastic. We're a unique community with the Spanish Fork River in that you do have, that's a lot of water coming from a long ways away that gets into Spanish Fork River. And so we do know, we have markers of how high that is way up the canyon. So there is some lead time to be able to say, here's what's coming down. And so that's where the messaging will be important for communities, or excuse me, for residents that live relatively close to the river. That's what will be affected. And so that'll be the call to action that you'll hear from us. But you can see we can't control how cool it is, and we can't control how hot it gets and how hot it warms up quickly. And all we can do is the work we're doing now and have been doing for over a month is mitigation in the river, removing sandbars, removing debris, so what you don't get is a channel that gets plugged up. So I can't say enough about the crews that have been in there. They're working hard. They're working overtime, around the clock, trying to make this an event that protects lives and property, obviously. And so, again, heed the warning that you'll hear, but don't get too concerned about what's happening in other communities where low snow is melting and they might be living right by the front of a mountain. we're talking about an event that's probably quite a bit later than those events being covered on local media. So watch for more, but we'll be strategic in our messaging and get it out quickly. So, okay, anything else, Jared, we need to cover there? Okay. Now we go to Spanish Fork 101. Item 6A is spring cleanup. Nobody's been waiting for this. Nobody's got a garage full of stuff at all.
It's well used.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Max Saby, Mayor and City Council. We're thankful for all that you do in behalf of the citizens and the people of Spanish Fork. Appreciate your time. Okay, and I've been asked to talk about spring cleanup. That's coming up this coming Monday is when it actually starts. It'll be the next week and the week after that, minus Sundays. The reason we don't do it on Sundays, there's no place to haul the dumpsters. And so the transfer station's closed, so when it's closed, we can't pick up garbage. So anyway, so that's what we've got. So it's going to be April 24th through the 29th and May 1st through May 6th. With no Sunday pickup, like I was saying. Last year, when we had this, we hauled over 500 tons of garbage out of Spanish Fork. That's quite a bit. If you look at it, we're going to go to the same 5 locations we had as last year. It's going to be Abbey Court, Centennial Park, Sierra Park, Sports Park, and then downtown behind Station 6-1 on Main Street where they're going to be. Last year, it cost us $70,000 to run this program. That's quite a chunk of change in reality, but if you boil that down, that's $5.78. This was last year. There's more customers than that now. It costs us $5.78 per customer per year, or 48 cents per month is what it costs to run this fall cleanup, or this spring cleanup. We've had some problems within the past, and there's certain things we've tried to do to cure that. We've had 2 dumpsters at each location in the past. Last year we went to 3, and that solved kind of our problem. When the dumpsters get full, well, we deal with the transfer station, Spanish Fork, or the solid waste transfer station over there in Springville. They're the one that hauls it for us, and they can only haul so fast. You know, it takes so long to pick up a dumpster, take it over, dump it, and bring it back. Well, they'd dump one off, and then they'd go dump another, and then bring it back. And so part of our hang-up last year, 2 years ago, is that we couldn't keep the dumpsters empty. We didn't have enough dumpsters there to do it. So we went from 2 dumpsters to 3 dumpsters last year, and that cured part of that problem right there. When there's 3 dumpsters, people have take more time to throw it in the dumpster. If they're full, they'll just pile it beside the dumpster. And then we have to go with a loader or forks or shovels or whatever and pick it up. And so we're trying to get rid of that. We haven't had any Sunday pickup last year, and it went pretty well with the exception of one park, and we had quite a pile there. It was 2 dump truck loads of stuff we hauled off that people put there on Sunday. When there was no dumpsters there, and they just piled it on the ground. So to cure that, or try to cure that, we've asked the police to go around and kind of monitor that a little bit on Sunday. We haven't had a problem the rest of the week, but that's why we're trying to cure that problem. The wind blows, and that's another complaint we get, is the neighbors complain that the garbage is blowing from where the dumpsters are to into their home. And so last year, and we're going to even do it more this year, we had employees down there go around more often and pick that up. Put it in the dumpster and keep it in the dumpster. We've tried to keep the dumpsters emptier so that the wind don't catch it so much. Then noise. We've had a complaint with noise. And in the past, some of the citizens have went and started as early as 5 o'clock in the morning to fill them. You know, and that's way too early to be in a neighborhood right there. And so we've put messages out. If you look at that paper I give you, that's the sign that's going to be front and rear that we're putting out at each station. So they're just on a little sign, and so that is actual signage right there. And so we've tried to put it out on social media and the city newsletter that would ask the citizens not to pick up or start dumping so early and not go so late at night. So we've asked them to go between 7 and 9 is what we've kind of went for. And so if you sit down and look at it, it's been very well accepted. But the major complaint that I've had on this right here, if you can believe it, is we're not running it long enough. That's my number one complaint I get right here. And this is 2 weeks. That's a pretty good time. I don't think we need to run it any longer than that. But that's my number one complaint. And so why do we spend this much money and time and energy and manpower when we've had problems and when we've had some concerns before? Why do we spend this money and do a spring cleanup? But if you look at it, it beautifies Spanish Fork. It's a good place to live. I've lived here for 42 years, I guess now, is what I've lived here. And it's a good activity or a good opportunity for the citizens to clean up. There's benefits to the city. If you take one load to the dump or to the landfill, it costs more than it does a whole year to run this right here. And so it's cheaper for the citizens. It's been very well accepted. But, you sit down and look at the motto of Spanish Fork, and, it's pride and progress. And this right here shows the pride and the progress that the city council and the mayor has on this right here when they've done this. And so I'd like to thank you for the time you put in behalf of this and that you put in for the city to help beautify Spanish Fork and to help the citizens in all that you do. And that's part of it right here. And so that's my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for doing it.
Any questions for Max?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks,
I think
Max.
the overall reminder is if you have a load, you're going to take it and it's full, don't throw it on the side. Just leave it in the back of your truck and come back. It'll be cleared, and then you
find
one of the other
4
stations.
locations.
Yep, find
all over town.
5 locations. That's right. Keep driving around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate it. Okay, that takes us to item number 7, consent items. If there's, is there any questions on the consent items? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Argyle, seconded by Councilman Marshall. All in favor, say yes.
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 Or does that need to be roll call?
Roll call.
Let's do roll call. Okay, we'll do roll call. Councilman Argyle.
Yes.
Councilman Cardon.
Yes.
Councilman Euler.
Yes.
Councilman Marshall.
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck.
Yes.
I promise it's not my first rodeo here. Sorry about that, Shane. Item 7's approved. Consent items approved. Takes us to item 8, public hearing. We have 4 public hearings tonight. First is item 8A, Windsong Ordinance Zone Change and Preliminary Plat Approval Request. David, you're presenting and running the technology.
We're in trouble now.
It's not running very well.
You need me to push a button?
No. Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, first public hearing that we have is for a project called Windsong. Before tonight is both a proposed preliminary plat for master plan development and a zone change for the subject property. It's located on the north side of South Lane, immediately east of the Annie's Acres development. Guys have any questions about where that's at? Okay, there's just another perspective of the development. Just under a 6-acre site, proposed to be developed in the R16 zone. Currently, the property is zoned rural residential. So part 1 would be to change the zoning from rural residential to R16, so as to potentially accommodate what we see here. A master plan development in the R16 zone, which in essence just means that all of the lots, sorry, I need to say that differently, which means that the average lot size for the lots that we see there is at least 6,000 square feet, and the density, so to speak, or the number of homes per acre here is less than 5.3 something. In as much as the applicant's been able to design a project that hits those criteria and has set aside space for improvements to South Lane, which in this case includes room for kind of a unique feature. The plan is to have a roundabout constructed right here. This is Bradford Lane along the west boundary of the project, and the plan is to someday have a 4-way intersection there that would be controlled with the construction of a roundabout. So, fairly straightforward proposal. Both the Development Review Committee and the Planning Commission have reviewed both parts of this. again, the zone change, changing the zoning from rural residential to R16, and the proposed preliminary plat, which would be a master plan development with the 19 homes in it.
It does say R18. It is 16.
Oh, boy. I apologize. This is definitely not R16. It's R18 is the proposal. I appreciate the applicants being able to make a project work with R18 zoning. Before they became involved, we worked with a number of different developers that tried to put a project together here with either the R3 zone or the R16 zone. And we saw proposals for twin homes, townhomes, all types of different things. And maybe just to talk about why we as staff felt R18 zoning was the most dense that would be appropriate here. It's kind of hard to see big picture, anything represented to indicate this on the city's land use map of the general plan. But the idea really is that as we move farther away from Main Street and commercial development that's planned to go along Main Street, particularly on the property that's right at the intersection of what's going to be Volunteer Drive and Main Street. As Volunteers constructed east of Main Street, eventually to provide this property with a better access to Main Street. The idea is that density lessens as you go farther away from Main Street. So, for example, the townhomes that are being built, they have the R3 zone. Then the idea would be that you'd have a zone that would allow for maybe 6,000 square foot lots, and then you'd go to 8,000 square foot lots and something larger as you go farther away from that. So I apologize for misspeaking there. Again, it's proposed to be zoned R18.
It's right on the paper, right?
Yeah.
In the ordinance, yeah.
What is one of the conditions is the connection to Volunteer Drive. How's that?
Yeah,
how's that play?
That's a really good question. Back with the original approval of the Annie's Acres development and then the River Run townhomes came right on the heels of that. At least one traffic study was done to identify the additional burden that could be put on South Lane before it became problematic. And there was a total number of homes that was identified as being the max that could be allowed in these developments before a second access to Main Street was constructed and operable, open, and so forth. So that access in this case would, let's say, start here, creating a four-way intersection with Volunteer Drive and Main Street, and proceed, generally speaking, in this direction, proceeding through the River Run townhomes development, connecting to Annie's Acres, and via that, Bradford Lane, just providing another route for both really local traffic in the neighborhood. We know that there's kind of citywide traffic that uses River Bottoms Lane or Road, River Bottoms Road and South Lane, just as a way to get around in the community and so forth. So that's that specific condition. So the applicants here, and maybe I'd let them speak to this if I'm misunderstanding what they believe, but we would not be able to issue any certificates of occupancy for homes in this project until that road connection is made, which incidentally is the same condition that's in place with the townhomes there with the River Run project and Annie's Acres at this point. We've allowed developers to proceed with the idea that that road connection will be finished sometime during this construction season, and that's the understanding that everybody's working with.
Okay.
Well, that would hold true to this development also.
And any others in the area. Yep.
The other two are on hold.
Yep.
Any questions for Dave before we open it up for public hearing? Thank you, Dave. Before we go to public hearings, the applicant here that would like to speak to anything before, sure, yeah, come on up. Take a minute if you would, and then we might call on you for other questions if they come up. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Good evening. I am Jamie Sanders. This is my business partner, Melissa Nelson. We are the hopeful developers of the Winsong subdivision. We are here tonight just to ask for preliminary plat approval. We've been going through the motions to meet all of the city requirements thus far and believe we have done so. We do understand there are further concerns about the wetlands and the fireflies to the north of this development. We do believe that we have addressed those with our proposal here. We understand and respect the right for any property owner to not develop their property due to those concerns. We do have the right to develop this property, and with us meeting all of the city's requirements and guidelines, as we have been working towards for quite a long time now, we believe that we are ready for preliminary plat approval this evening. So thank you for having us here tonight.
Thanks.
And thank you, who brought up the 6,000 square foot lots, and then it
8,000.
It was on the general plan. It was at 6,000 square foot lots, and then someone on the city did not want that, and so we have switched and shifted to the 8,000 square foot lots, and so that is what you see here. And so so we've made it work according to what the city's requests have been, and just want to continue pushing it through.
Do either of you have any concerns about a 6 to 8 foot masonry wall on the north end of your property?
So we will not be the builders on this development. We're developing it to sell to a builder. So for us, it is just taking the comments that the city makes and making it work. And
you already have a builder in place?
We do not.
No. We don't have any problem with that requirement, though. We understand it, and we're happy to accommodate.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Cardin, seconded by Councilwoman Beck to go into public hearing for this item. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
We're in public hearing. Anybody from the public that would like to come up and speak to this, please do so.
Diane Garcia, and my property borders this proposal. So several things. One, when you say a 6 to 8 foot wall, obviously they're always going to choose a 6 foot wall. It's cheaper. So I would prefer an 8 foot if that would work. Also, I don't know if these are single story homes or 2 story, but if they're 2 story and they put lights on every peak of their house, the wall doesn't block a lot of light. So I don't know if this is going to be an HOA or some kind of community like that, but that would also help if we could have some light ordinance so that the lights that are actually on the homes are also dark sky compliant, just like the lights for the street lights, which I have to thank you all for putting up with me all these years, because it is wonderful to drive around Spanish Fork and see the new development with the dark sky compliant streetlights. So thank you very much for listening to me all these years, because it does make a difference. Also, it is wetlands out there, and this year it's really wet, and it's going to be wetter in the coming weeks. So not just the river flowing, but the water table has risen. The canal is an earth canal. The canal leaks every year. I have photos of this property next to me with standing water on it because of flooding from the canal. So I think an earth canal is not a place I would want my home downhill from at any given time. So that is something to think about. There are natural springs all throughout my property and all the adjacent properties. So as they develop and they put in drainage and stuff, it's going to make me wetter or make me drier. And we don't know until it happens. If the developer takes all these things into consideration and does everything they can to minimize the negative effects on my property, who would not want to have their home next to a field of fireflies? So it would be an awesome marketing and selling point if they took that extra care and did that. I don't know if any of you drive down and go out in the river bottoms at night, but when I drive out there now at night, I can barely see Annie's Acres even existing. It is dark down there because of those dark sky compliant streetlights and because they keep their lights off. And it's awesome. And I hope, it keeps up that way so that we can keep that natural resource that we can't replace. Once it's gone, we can't replace it. So a lot of things to think about. My grandfather sold 18 acres back in the 70s. That is now Scenic Drive and Wolf Hollow Estates. And when the developer came in, the developer, knows more than anybody else. And they started developing. They ripped out all of the drainage lines that my grandfather had carefully put in after decades of farming that land. And he knew where the drainage needed to be. And the first year, those homes, their basements filled with water, because there wasn't drainage. And so Spanish Fork City had to get an easement and run a drainage line through our property to drain that water off of those homes. So some things we don't know until they happen, and I would hate for people who spend their hard-earned money on homes to have them in standing water. So,
Diane, can I ask you a question while you're up?
You bet.
Have you noticed a change at all in the fireflies on your property with the development of Annie's Acres?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because the last 2 years have been really dry, and hot. and it got hot fast. But every year we still have. I mean, there's nights when I have a group out there and I'm like, wow, the fireflies aren't very active tonight. But the people are like, oh my gosh, there's fireflies everywhere. So it's all subjective and, relative as to what you experience. But it does fluctuate. But I honestly do not think that Annie's Acres is contributing any light pollution into my fields.
Do you know how much I love hearing you say that?
Oh, I know. Do you know how much I love driving down there at night and go, I can't even tell there's a development there.
This is like such awesome feedback.
Yes,
I love
it is. Now, I've got another concern.
Oh, no, not now.
I do. So as I watched all those trees get torn down for the new rec center, those trees were blocking a lot of light from the ballparks. Something to think about when you put up the rec center, dark sky compliant lights. So, I took Dale and Chris out on a Thursday night, and they got to see the ballpark lights light up my fields, and they were like, we did not know that it would travel this far. And then I brought them out on a Sunday night when there were no ball games playing, and they were like, wow, it's dark out here. You can see the fireflies so much better. So it does make those ballpark lights shine for miles and miles. And now there's no trees to block. So something to think about.
Point.
Thanks.
Good point.
Thank you, Diane.
We'll build that rec center really, really tall so it blocks.
With lights going down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Hales came on the right evening.
I didn't know I was supposed to. I own the property just that's adjacent to that on the west side. I'm concerned about the irrigation. It presently transverses that where you can see it make the triangle. That's an irrigation ditch.
I think this is a laser, if you'd like to point it at it. Just point the right end. Don't hit Tara with it. Push that button. There you go.
Oh, that right there is an irrigation ditch, and I take it there.
And now speak into the microphone so the millions can listen. Councilman Hales, sorry.
I'm sure that they make accommodation for this, but I take the irrigation right at this point. And I also have fireflies.
Do you?
I think that we noticed those before probably Diane did. It was a lot of years. I and my wife were sitting on the patio and she says, there's a firefly. We don't have fireflies around here. The other thing I recognize there's property rights on both sides of the fence, but Annie's Acres and that is it's dusty and it's hard to live with, and I'm just wondering if when this is under construction if there could be some kind of dust mitigation, because the canyon wind, if I want to have anything on my patio I have to clean it every day almost, but But there's property rights on both sides of the fence, and so that's my concern, and I hope they're taken in, because I plan to irrigate.
Okay.
I don't plan to ever develop.
Thank you, Myling. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Jackie Larson. I'm just wondering has the river bottoms actually been defined yet? Because we were talking about flooding, and then in my mind this is river bottoms. Has it been defined?
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Councilman Euler, seconded by Councilman Cardin. To go out of public hearing on this item, all in favor say yes.
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 We're out of public hearing. Discussion back up here. A couple of questions. Any questions that you guys have before maybe asking some questions of staff here?
Go for it.
You got it.
Okay. I guess my first question, some might come back to the property owner there, but dark sky lighting, I assume this was discussed in Planning Commission and DRC. The street lights there would be the same street lights that are in Annie's Acres, right? Okay.
What about on the homes? Do we enforce anything on homes?
We do not.
Can
No.
Sure, I believe.
Can we also say the 3 homes that are on that back lot be single family rather than 2? Or is that?
Single story.
Single story.
Yes, single story.
Can we limit the height of homes on different lots in the development?
No, not without. They can bring their own CCRs, right? Do that. But
Just like
our zoning regulations apply uniform.
So in their development, as they sell to the builder, they can't say the 3 homes that are next to Diane's property have to be single story rather than 2 stories?
We cannot.
Okay.
An owner can.
Okay.
By a deed restriction on a CCR.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Keep
No, you're all right. The question about water, about water in the area and not affecting water of adjacent property owners, that's something discussed in the obviously the engineering of the development and everything that has to conform to those standards. I guess Mr. Hales, same thing would apply with the ditch there. The ditch will have to, the water delivery is a law. It's not a nicety. Water is a serious issue, especially in agriculture. So that'll have to be reconciled, right? Water still has to be delivered to Mr. Hales so he can irrigate.
And I believe that has been with our engineering review, and would be the plans for that would be further refined should the zone change in plat be approved tonight. The applicant's next step would be to fully design the infrastructure, prepare construction plans and everything like that, and that's really when, for example, approvals would be sought after via ditch companies, canal companies, anybody like that, and the actual, like I said, improvements would be designed. But as proposed, it's my understanding that our folks have reviewed things, and they believe that that next step wouldn't be a problem.
Can you or Jared speak to SWIP ordinances in Spanish Fork and dust mitigation efforts, mud on roads and stuff like that?
But Jared wants a little bit of airtime, so.
Yeah, we've got our SWIP administrator and SWIP inspector that go out, and they're doing a really good job this year. And so if there's any dust or any mud on the streets, they go out and take care of it, and they get it taken care of right away. We just need, if you see something, let us know. We'll get on it that day. But we usually, we're on top of things within a couple of days. But if you see something, just let us know, and we'll get out there. So.
And you're speaking just to the streets, not necessarily if there's
Well, it's a subdivision, so the subdivision will have to have a SWIP, so the whole site has to keep in compliance. So any dust coming off the subdivision will have to be mitigated, and then any mud tracked out onto our public streets.
Myling, we're going to give you Jared's cell phone number, is what we're going to give you. Okay?
On the condition of the 6-foot fence or 6 to 8 foot fence on the northern border, are we just talking this little piece, or are we talking this whole northern border?
It's the little piece.
And can we just change that to 8 foot and just avoid the question?
Yeah, I would be good with that as well.
Any fences or walls constructed in Spanish Fork at a height that's taller than 6 feet requires your approval.
Approved.
So,
But if they're two-story buildings, what's that going to do?
yeah, honestly, I don't think the fence height does anything in terms of light spillover, limiting that.
But it is their backyard, but I think when we did Annie Acres, we come to the conclusion that the backlights were actually putting off more than the front lights. Did we not come to that? With concerning the fireflies and
Meaning the lights on the homes versus the street lights.
their backlights were actually brighter than their front lights. I think Kier come up with that one. So I guess we're going to put some of this stuff in place, but we don't know who's going to build this development. Concerning the dust, concerning the SWIP, the walls and the fencing. Dark skies, of course, is a city ordinance to keep that within the regulations. The ditch is in the fences. The ditch is obviously going to have to be realigned. There's a drainage ditch there, I believe, also, Myling.
Yes, there is. There's 2 drainage.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
I don't think we ever know, to be honest with you. And in as much as it's very common at a stage like this, in fact, it's more common to have a home builder today be the land developer as well. That's part of their business model. That's partly how they make money and achieve the kind of margin that they want with the investment that they put into a project. Particularly these days, we're seeing projects get sold from the folks that present themselves to you as if they're going to be the builders. All that we really can do as the city is make sure that when the projects get approved, they meet city criteria, really even assuming that they're going to get sold with, assuming that they're going to perhaps get sold, and with that, making sure that things are memorialized as part of the approval and so forth, so that regardless of who ends up building it, it happens in a way that is consistent with what you approve.
Okay, so concerning the ditches, I don't read anything here that, and I know that's law and the canal companies and everything else will have to be done. Does that need to be a part of this? And if we do an 8-foot, what's on Myling Hales' property? No fence there between the two properties?
No fence.
No, there's no fence. Barbed wire.
Do you have a fence?
Barbed wire fence.
Okay.
Yeah, so for example, and honestly, I think this is redundant, and maybe Vaughn can shed some light on it as well, but the first proposed condition of approval, I don't know if you want to call it a belt or suspenders, but that's kind of the concept of where we're trying to double up and to make sure that, like I said, we're memorializing some things as facts. And the fact is that as the applicant, any applicant, should the project change hands, excuse me, moves forward, they have to continue to meet the city's requirements. So we have, for example, a really big book of design and construction standards that has all types of specifications that engineers need to design to. I assume for things like storm drain systems, and I think a lot of times ditch designs, those are subject to additional scrutiny by canal companies and their consultants and that type of a thing. I don't want to suggest that we take any of this lightly, but frankly, this is the kind of stuff that our staff deals with day in and day out. the civil engineers that we work with that are hired by developers, likewise for them. Not to say we always get it right, but this is the basic stuff for sure.
What is with that big book that you have, what is the light ordinance for a development coming in and their light pollution at boundary line?
We don't have a criteria for that.
We do for commercial, but not for residential?
We don't have a criteria even for commercial. We do review called photometric plans with non-residential developments, situations where there's maybe a parking lot involved or something like that. Sure. And there are communities that will measure and require certain foot candles to be maintained. Foot candles just as a way to measure how much light a site's going to have when it's built and the fixtures are installed and that type of a thing. They'll require that a certain amount of light, like a minimum level, is maintained throughout a site, usually with some kind of uniformity so there aren't bright and dark spots. And it's not uncommon for likewise communities to require no more light spillover than X foot candles. Typically we see close to zero spillover with the plans that we look at, and that simply is a matter of with the right fixtures and the right kind of shielding and things like that, folks can achieve that. So
is that a requirement that we would need to place on those houses in order, because we're talking about an 8-foot, 6-foot fence, whatever it may be, but if we're talking about those, especially those 3 top lots, would we need to put some condition on that specifically talking about foot candles or whatever that specification would be?
Vaughn, I'll let you help. We don't have a standard. So
no.
It would be us developing a standard, I think.
Gotcha.
When I said earlier that yes, I think you could, but that would be a matter of us developing some criteria and a way to measure compliance and putting that in ordinance.
Okay.
It's tricky too, because then when you're talking about lights
for
on
sure
the exterior, right?
Yeah.
Light bulbs last how long, and who decides what they change them to? And then if we've got an ordinance, are we now putting undue pressure on our officers to have to go and check the lights on homes and make sure they're not so bright, or it becomes tricky.
So we just have control over our street lights, not housing lights, right? But maybe if Diane can give them a free night at the Firefly Farm, they'll put the right lights in.
Is this going to be an HOA?
No.
Single family lots, no HOA. I like it.
And there's an idea here. I just kind of thinking about these lots 1, 2, and 3. Thinking an 8-foot fence behind the two. I only have one back light on the back of my house, and it's where I walk out the back door to a porch. That's not up high. That's down low by where I'm at. So I think your concern maybe is if the Christmas lights that get up all on the eaves now and can be somewhere.
Christmas lights, but you know how they do it architecturally now? They got a light on every peak.
Right, in the awning, right?
Yeah.
So directionally, I'm thinking about that, hoping that's pointed down, just like your street lights are pointed down. I don't know.
Those are usually front facing though, right? Not often do they.
Yeah, usually you don't put on the
rear of a home.
Well, they're on your soffit, not your fascia. They're on the inside below your gutter. If you think about a peak like this, you got the light on the bottom of that peak, not on the gutter.
In the front yard.
Right.
Usually you're putting them on the front.
Yeah, I know.
If you drive by the old Pioneer Cemetery, a lot of those homes have them on the front, the back, the side.
But I think that's just because everyone can see their back. Not the average Joe puts them on their backyard.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the architectural design of the house.
Yeah.
Because some of them have lots of peaks and some don't.
Are we right? Like, are we in the weeds on this, or is there?
Yes.
Okay. Shane gets on there when we get in the weeds.
6,000 square foot lot. You're not going to have a deep backyard, I'm guessing, because of the lot size, which also means if you've just got that patio light on the back.
8,000.
Or 8,000.
Sorry.
One
all Dave's fault.
Trickles forever.
Sorry.
Still at that, I think, like you're saying, Mayor, 6-foot fence likely will block that lower patio light, and it sounds like Ms. Garcia is mostly concerned about the upper lights anyways, if they have them, so.
Yeah, so it's not going to be, it's going to be negligible at that point.
6-foot fence probably sufficient.
Yeah.
Can I bring something up really quickly? If we do
Please come up.
Oh, yeah, you bet. So on the other parts of the development, we're asked to do a 6-foot masonry wall around certain areas, like by main roads and things like that, right? And so if we are going to be required to do an 8-foot wall on lots 1, 2, and 3, can you as a council maybe consider doing a different style of fencing and not making the back fence masonry, but could we do a vinyl fence, an 8-foot vinyl fence?
Are we set on 8 foot though? It sounded like
No, I
Kevin and
think
Jesse
we're
were
fine to
both
go.
saying no, they're good with 6.
Yeah.
I know that the lots, like you had brought up, they are the 8,000 square foot lots. And so they are pretty. I have an 8-foot fence in my backyard, and I have a .37 lot. And so that 8-foot fence along the back end for me is not intrusive. But if I had a very shallow yard, I would feel like
Yeah, it was right there.
this, and then I wouldn't have any beautiful mountain views or anything like that. I understand that that's not necessarily the concern here. We're talking about the fireflies. I was just thinking of whoever ends up building and living on lots 1, 2, and 3, that they may not want this.
Yeah, no,
So-
I agree. I think that's the right thing.
Hopefully who lives in 1, 2, and 3 like the fireflies, and so they're going to turn off their lights anyway, right?
Yeah, they should sell those lots for more for being that close to them. The mason between the development to the west and the next development, I believe that's a masonry fence between Annie's Acres and the. Isn't it, Jared? I believe it is. So it'd be
Or is
keeping.
it- where have they got the wrought iron? Is that just along the front on South Lane?
It's inside their development.
It's inside there.
Yeah, I don't believe there is a masonry wall.
I'm trying to remember.
Masonry wall
yes, sorry,
between
between
River Run.
townhomes.
Yeah,
between
the
River
towns.
Run and
There
Andes.
is, yes.
Okay. Any other questions up here? Shane?
I don't think so.
I don't have a question. I think that when we do this, we do love to dig into the weeds a little bit. The city has standards. If we want to adjust those standards, that's a perfectly good conversation to have. But to continually talk about this particular thing, like, I get a little bit uncomfortable. Like, if the fence height's not right, if we need to change the ordinance or the standards to accommodate light spillage, then let's do that. But we can't sit and apply the standards differently on every single piece that comes in front of us. But I think we do need to learn every time something comes, and if there's something we need to change and adjust, we need to direct them to do so. It doesn't sound like we're to that point of changing and adjusting. If our standards don't cover getting water from one point to the other, we have a really big problem. So I'm pretty sure they do. I'm not trying to scold anyone. I'm just saying that there's a process in place. And if we decide that we want to change it, let's direct them to change it, not particular to this location. Other than that, I will shut up. I think we had one more question about river bottoms in general.
Yeah,
Probably if you zoomed back out, you could probably see the delineation of what we have termed river bottoms, and it's north of...
South of South Lane.
South of South Lane, thank you. That part.
South of South Lane, south of the River Bottoms Road.
Yep.
Which is
Right on the border.
County property.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman Marshall. Any other questions, council members, for staff, the applicant? Okay. If there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion on item 8A.
I'll go ahead and move to approve the ordinance Windsong subdivision, master plan development approval and zone change with the findings there, report and the findings and conditions.
Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Beck with the one finding and 4 conditions, seconded by Councilman Euler. So roll call vote. Councilman Cardon?
Yes.
Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
Councilman Euler?
Yes.
Item 8A is approved. That takes us to item 8B. Proposed ordinance amendment of Title 15 to create a master plan development overlay zone. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it, and thanks everyone for your comments.
Once again, thank you. The city has a program in place. In fact, it's been around for a long time, more than 20 years, to allow for, with the council's approval, properties to be developed in a way that may not be completely in sync with some traditional zoning requirements like minimum lot size or minimum lot width or depth, that falls in line with a concept that supposes that with some matter of flexibility when somebody is designing a subdivision, when they're designing a neighborhood, they can come up with something that's going to simply be a better place for people to live than they would if somebody followed a very regimented type of pattern that you would get if every lot, to use this last project as an example, were at least 8,000 square feet and was at least 75 feet wide and at least 90 feet deep, and you had that box to work with, and that box got repeated over and over and over again along streets. The idea simply is that there may be a better way at times to develop certain properties. And the goal simply is to create the best possible neighborhoods. We've called that master planned developments in Spanish Fork. At times, I think collectively between staff and the council and planning commission and even residents of the community, there have been feelings that it's worked well, and there have been feelings that it had shortcomings and it's been modified and changed over the years. Essentially what's before you tonight, this proposed change really isn't intended to modify the tool or the end result that you might see by way of a proposed subdivision. But it does modify the process, and I think it clearly changes ultimately what would be proposed to you as a master plan development from being an administrative act to a legislative act. We think this particular proposal is an important one for you to consider and frankly to act on. We're recommending that you do as the DRC and Planning Commission did, so as to clearly make sure that you have latitude as the City Council to do different things with master plan development proposals, to require developers to modify proposals, and to give you the most clear discretion as to whether or not a project gets approved as a master plan development or not. And I don't mean to put Vaughn on the spot, but trying to summarize the different things that we've been hoping to achieve with this. Missing anything that's worth noting?
I think that's great. And the main difference is converting an administrative subdivision process into a legislative process to determine whether or not this is entitled to a rezone. Does it deliver the features you think it should in order to qualify as a master plan development?
So in essence, gives more oversight.
It's a way to put it, and really be more clear, and just in my opinion, about the council's authority to exercise discretion when projects are proposed in that fashion. Property owners will always have the ability to propose a development for consideration as what we call a standard subdivision. That's where, again, they meet those specific criteria, and if they do that, and if the zoning is in place, then that's an administrative act. Somebody gets approved, period. But master plan developments, I believe, have been different and should be different, and that's why we're here.
David, any idea percentage over the last few years of standard developments compared to master plan developments?
I'm aware of one project that has been reviewed as a standard subdivision. It was on the Planning Commission's agenda, their last meeting, an amendment of it, and it threw our staff as kind of for a loop, in fact, that Planning Commission was the land use authority because it's a standard subdivision. It didn't need to come to you in this meeting tonight for approval as a master plan development. So maybe 1 in 30, just going back some number of years, been a pretty small number. And honestly, and I mean this genuinely, and I would be proposing some other change if I didn't feel like, at least the vast majority of the time, the city's getting something better with that.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing for item 8B.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Argyle.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Cardon to go into public hearing. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
We're in public hearing for 8B. Anybody from the public that would like to speak to this ordinance?
Hi again. My name is Jackie Larson. I just have questions about the setback requirements. So can something be added to offer a sufficient buffer when there's existing surrounding ag uses to this overlay? So currently the setback requirements do not provision for development next to ag ground. And the orientation and of the buildings kind of does impact the surrounding property. So, so simply put, you can't really grow crops well if you have any restrictions to sunlight, and the sun angle affects the moisture and vegetation and the soil development of surrounding ag uses. So additional setbacks would be reasonably necessary for functionality, operation, maintenance, and the use of surrounding ground when timing is absolutely critical, and ultimately determines crop yield for surrounding ag uses. So I think currently it's just doesn't, the code doesn't even mention if it's anything rural residential or I think it's exclusive agriculture or residential agriculture for the county if it's right next to that. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public for item 8B? If not, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilwoman Beck.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Marshall to go out of public hearing. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Okay, discussion back up here for item 8B.
To Jackie's comment, that was talked about in Planning Commission as well. And I think that the answer was that setbacks are still in law, right? If it's a 20-foot setback, wow, I can speak, it still has to be 20 feet away from the ag, right? Or rural residential or whatever it may be.
You know, setbacks actually are one of the things that often does get modified with a master plan development proposal. Generally speaking, they're getting reduced and not increased. We don't have, at least for the most part, any increased setback when somebody's adjacent to, for example, like a rural residential zone or that type of a thing.
If
That's something we could look at.
Sorry, I was just going to say, but if we were to put something specifically in there, we'd be tying our hands to that and not giving the latitude to either increase or decrease that.
Conceivably, yeah. Depending on exactly what you come up with, right? That it could go in that direction. I guess my thought on that would be that if that's something that you'd like to explore, I think that's probably best that we maybe take a look at that rather than, for example, just by way of an initial thought, most of the properties that we have in town that people are developing today are coming out of the rural residential zone. So having an increased setback next to properties that maybe somebody has alfalfa on or something like that today, for all we know, next year that's a subdivision, right. Which might just be one thing to consider if you know, maybe protecting an agricultural operation of some type is a goal. Something we'd be happy to look at if you'd like, but right now we don't have provisions in place for that.
Could we look at this on an individual basis? They're brought to us, and then at that time think about that question, and depending on where it is and who it's affecting and what's happening in the near future, look at it then?
So if you drafted the ordinance in a way that allowed you some latitude and consider setbacks adjacent to agricultural property.
But I think that was, going back to my first question, I think I wouldn't want to tie our hands either way with putting something specific about any type of land use, because I think that we should, with the master plan development, have that authority to make those changes. That would be my personal preference.
I guess, go ahead, Shane.
Nope, go for it.
I guess my question is, do we actually have any use case or historical data showing, at least in Spanish Fork, where setbacks have affected agriculture?
Depending on where it's oriented, but Madera, for instance, would.
Which it's not built, so we don't have any historical proof that a building affects agriculture in Spanish Fork.
Yes.
Okay.
Or it has been.
So that's something I'd like to look at the data prior to making an actual ordinance change.
I agree with both what you both said. I think that when we went through the Madero conversation, we had these questions about how that particular project could impact farming. And we never really got to a resolution about how we handle that buffer between where residential stops and farming begins. I think it would be a good thing for you all to study and come back with some recommendations. Whether or not it makes it into this ordinance or not, I think it would be good to have that conversation, and maybe it's just a statement that allows us the flexibility, but directs the developer to think about it before they bring us the development. So it could be that general, but I do like the idea of having some research, backing it up with some data, and then let's have the conversation, because we're going to be facing it more and more often as we move out to the west.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll call the setbacks in agriculture, but I also worry when we do a overlay within the city limits, and that be built, if we were building a single building, it's 20 feet, and then they come in and want to build 2 townhomes or something, and they're allowed to go 5 feet setback. It doesn't match the neighborhood. I don't like that at all, because that has happened more than once. I also see that it looks like to me you're lessening the parking to this situation, or is that something we'll have to review as it comes up? You're going from 2.5 to 2.25, and changing the situation with the garages and stuff like that.
That is not the intent, I will tell you that.
Okay.
In fact, most of the language that we have here, you can pick out what parts, you might be able to pick out what parts are new. They refer to kind of the zoning aspect of the overlay. But a lot of this is a cut and paste from what now is just an administrative section that describes master plan developments, taking that over into something that's akin to like our infill overlay or the development enhancement overlay, for the purpose of making it clearly a legislative act. The 2.25 parking spaces, the ordinance isn't numbered, but it's
Section C.
C, yes.
That paragraph looks...
C under architecture.
It looks exactly the same.
That matches what we require in the R5 zone. So it's really just a redundant statement of the 2.25 parking spaces, which is what's required, for example, with the Reese apartment project. That's the only project that's been approved in the R5 zone in the city. For most of the bigger new developments, Modera was referenced. The parking required there is, like it says also in C, 2.25 spaces per home. So just to be clear, we have not intended to lessen any criteria at all, or really to change that side of it. Mostly for the sake of just making this as simple as we can, transitioning from one kind of process to another.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions for staff on this item? Okay. If there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion for item 8B.
I move to approve the ordinance Title 15 amendments, master plan development overlay zone, and change to density calculations with findings and conditions. I guess there was no findings and conditions.
Motion made by Councilman Cardon, seconded by Councilman Marshall. This is a roll call vote. Councilwoman Beck.
Yes.
And Councilman Marshall.
Yes.
Councilman Euler.
Yes.
And Councilman Cardon.
Yes.
Councilman Argyle.
Yes.
Item 8B is approved. Takes us to item 8C, the next public hearing, proposed ordinance amendment to Title 15 that would modify the density that is permitted in master plan developments.
Once again, thank you. If I understood Councilman Cardon's motion, it covered this as well. So might be cleaning up here. It's as simple as this. So when we talk about slight increases going from 0.3, I can't tell if it's an 8 or a 9 with the strike through there, to 0.4 units per acre, and from 0.52 to 0.53 and so forth. I explained a little bit of the train of thought in a memorandum that accompanied the ordinance by way of this is simply a change in how much land we take out of the equation for basically things like streets and other areas of projects that get left out of lot space. It's that simple.
I thought you said a better calculator or something. It's
This-
49 change.
Dave, was this something that city staff addressed, or was this because developers explained, hey, you know, you're actually cutting out our total land because of your streets being widened, or how did this come up?
Yeah, great question. As is often the case, this is the result of one specific development proposal where we had a chance to take a more detailed look at this issue, density, and how it impacted that project. And that caused us to go back and kind of scrutinize our methodology a little bit. And at the end of that, we ended up feeling like this was a better approach than what we had in place before.
You feel like this is sufficient? Because looking at it, it doesn't seem like a very large change, right?
Which I think is important that we don't make a very large change at this point. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago when we, via a different mechanism, really reduced the density that people can have in master plan developments. The average lot size, for example, was one way to do that. So in my opinion, the city hasn't necessarily, city being the council and the planning commission, haven't wanted to see greater density in master plan developments. So only a nominal increase like this is what I'd be comfortable recommending that you approve. And as has been the case before, the Development Review Committee and Planning Commission both recommended that this be approved.
The number you're talking about, 28% of an acre, reduced down to 26.5% of an acre.
That's the difference.
Okay. Any other questions for Dave before public hearing? I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Cardon, seconded by Councilman Argyle to go into public hearing. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
We're in public hearing. Anybody from the public that wants to speak to item 8C, Title 15 Amendment? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
Second, or so moved. I'll do both.
Councilman Argyle did them both, but he can't. That's against the law. So Councilman Argyle proposed go to out of public hearing, seconded by Councilman Euler. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Discussion back up here. Any questions for Dave or staff on this?
No.
I'd entertain a motion for item 8C.
Motion to approve proposed ordinance amendment to Title 15 that would modify the density that is permitted in a master plan development.
Motion made by Councilman Argyle.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Marshall. A roll call vote. Councilman Argyle.
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck.
Yes.
Councilman Marshall.
Yes.
Councilman Euler.
Yes.
And Councilman Cardon.
Yes.
Item 8C is approved. Takes us to item 8D, Ordinance Annexation Policy Plan Amendment. Dave, next council meeting, you'll be able to sit at a desk with a mic.
Ah, that'll be nice.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Or come up here. We still like you.
That's how he gets his steps in the day.
It's true.
Okay, just by way of a little bit of orientation here, this is State Route 77, so the very north boundary right now of Spanish Fork is here and here. The 4th South and Springville interchange is maybe just someplace off the map over here to our right, to the east of the area that we're discussing. Main Street, incidentally, is probably right about there. We have an annexation policy plan. Every community in Utah is required to have one, and it essentially describes the land that communities at some point in time anticipate annexing. What's shown in here in yellow has been discussed, at least some of it has been before. There are 320 acres here that were presented to the City Council a few months ago as part of what was called the GWC 320 annexation. And a lot of work has happened on the part of a potential developer of that property and our neighboring community, Springville. Right now, these properties and others in the area are in Springville's annexation policy plan, but not Spanish Fork's. And to try to be succinct, I will simply say that it's our understanding as staff, at least it's been clearly represented by Springville, that for different reasons, should an annexation proposal be made to bring properties west of this line into Spanish Fork, they would not protest that. And indeed, you can see on your agenda, we have that very question back on your agenda tonight, along with this proposal to kind of set the stage potentially for you acting on that annexation at some point in the future of what could be this entire area here. Originally presented as the GWC 320, meaning approximately 320 acres. Over 200 acres have been added to that. There are properties here that are owned by the Hales family. 2 or 3 parcels, again, totaling over 200 acres. So what we see here is 535 acres or so, I believe, which today is simply being proposed in this regard as an amendment to the annexation policy plan. Does that make sense? So we have a map, and it coincides with our current general plan boundaries that shows all of the land that today you or some previous council person has voted to have defined as the city's annexation policy plan. So this would be added to that if after you hold a public hearing here tonight you decide to act and to amend the boundary to include this. I really appreciate we had a conversation with the Planning Commission shortly after this idea kind of really started to grow legs, and even talking about a couple of other areas about how do we evaluate what makes sense to include in the annexation policy, with the idea that at some point in time it's probably going to make sense to evaluate some other areas as well. We have not amended our annexation policy plan to grow much at all for probably 30 years that I'm aware of. Actually, we've shrunk a little bit. There was an explosives plant on the other side of Highway 89. We did a swap with Mapleton, so that went into Mapleton, and we scaled back our boundary a little bit, but haven't taken this step very often. Planning Commission felt like a few criteria were really important to consider when a proposal like this is made. Can the city serve properties with with utilities? And in this particular case, that's one of the big reasons that the proposal is being made. A significant investment's been made in constructing really significant utility capacity in or in close proximity to that State Route 77 corridor. Planning Commission felt like property owners' desires were important to consider when something like this is proposed. And indeed, we know that in the affirmative, the property owners whose properties are included here would like to have their properties not just included in the annexation policy plan, but also in an annexation and to be annexed into the city. They felt like land use was important. They did not want to amend our annexation policy plan necessarily if we understood that a property owner's desire for the future use of that property was not consistent with the city's general plan. In this case, one property that we know of that is, I believe, very ready for development. They'd like to develop that in a manner that is consistent with the general plan designation that exists for the surrounding area. And I'll come back to touch on the general plan in just a moment, and maybe ask Vaughn for some advice there as well. But then the last thing simply was, is it relevant, or is it in the perceived or believable path of development today? Or might it be 30 or 40 years out in terms of being ready for some type of land use change? Referencing back to the utility improvements that have been made in the state route there, and what I understand of the proponents' desires to develop the majority part of what we're looking at here, it certainly is in the path of development, and I think they'd like to move as fast as they possibly can. We haven't done this much, so one question that I have really is the general plan. Would we ask the council to consider a general plan designation for this now? Do we need to? Do we revisit that later?
We can visit that later.
Okay.
This is simple with the annexation policy plan.
Okay.
General plan amendment as well. The zoning amendment.
Okay. Likely with an annexation, we'd be talking about zoning and that type of a thing. So.
With the annexation.
Okay.
With the general plan.
Sure. So. Kind of finish up with just the nuts and bolts. The Development Review Committee's reviewed this, as has the Planning Commission. They've recommended that it be approved. This does not in any way, shape, or form guarantee somebody that these properties are annexed, but without this change being made, I don't believe you can act on an annexation. So it's a necessary step for that purpose.
Got a question for you, Dave. Finding number 1 is that Springville City Council not be opposed. What's the communication been with their council? Who from the city has spoken with them?
Their city administrator has communicated directly with myself and Seth. And I know our mayor and their mayor have conversed. They've been very clear with respect to what is represented here. And they didn't get to that point, as I understand it, quickly or easily. I think it took many, many months of work with an applicant, working with Springville's staff and elected folks to get them to where they were prepared to not protest this.
And I assume they have plans on their end to adjust or amend their own policy boundary.
They haven't been clear about that, which is, I would think at some point in time they would, but they haven't done that yet.
In a previous meeting, we heard about this. Does this need to be by the same people? This was also being considered.
Yes. We've talked a lot about that recently.
So this will be on another. Okay.
At another time, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
That, you want to shed any light? I know.
Yeah, the devils and the dons are speaking about these fuzzy lines that need to become more solid lines. And in those discussions are obviously the people with a lot of input and a lot of say are the property owners. And so it's good that the cities are talking straight to each other about this rather than maybe third parties talking to each of our cities about it. So that's why I say the devils and dons are in graces. Shane, you made a lot of problems back in the 90s about the devils and dons. We're just reconciling those.
After you got done cruising.
A lot of history over this desk.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Councilman Argyle, and I think we'll be figuring those out in meetings to come, both on their side and our side.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing as well. I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Argyle.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Euler to go in public hearing. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
We're in public hearing. Anybody from the public? Applicant that's here, if you'd like to speak for a minute, if you don't have to, but if you'd like to speak for a minute before we have the public speak.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Jared Morgan. I'm with GWC Capital. We're the applicant. I just would like to speak to the process we went through with Springville City. Mayor Packard and Troy Fitzgerald and their team. It was about a 7-month process. We about this time last year we approached them and at their city council of various work sessions, and we talked about our vision for the area and their potential to be able to service us and to be able to sustain our loads and our growth and our capacity, and so we funded a feasibility study with the city, and we're happy to share that with you if you'd like to see that. The feasibility study really it showed a significant capital investment requirement for Springville City, and it also showed quite the timeline needed to be able to actually get utilities to this corridor, to the tune of between 3 to 5 years for certain utilities. And so, Mayor Packard and I spoke frequently regarding this, and we ultimately decided financially for our organization and for the city, we were able to produce enough data that they would be able to substantiate their decision to effectively relinquish this area, to Spanish Fork because of their inability to serve at the dollar amount and the speed at which you can service it. So that's what led us to the decision. And Mayor Packard was clear that we wanted to have a data-driven decision and remove the emotion of the devils and dons to arrive to what we did. So they have that to back themselves up with their constituents, and they feel like they've arrived there. And so that's why we're here today. I'm hoping that we have the opportunity to come into your city. And like Dave has mentioned, we've entered into a public-private partnership with your city and with the Solid Waste District. There's some significant investment the Clyde Company has been funding, regional investment, and the reason why this makes a lot of sense is because of the capacities and the depths of the investment and the infrastructure. We're considering this, the second phase of our industrial development, which is why we focused on it. So, just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Mr.
Happy to
Morgan.
answer any questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. We'll ask you if we got some questions. Okay, this is the public hearing. Anybody from the public that would like to speak to item 8D? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Councilman Cardin, seconded by Councilman Argyle. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
We're out of public hearing. Discussion up here. Any questions?
Yep. I don't know who this is for, Dave, Jared, whomever. The main reason this is going out of Springville and into Spanish Fork is because the cost of providing services. Springville doesn't want to pay for those costs. Why should we?
I don't believe Spanish Fork has, I'm here to speak for the city necessarily, but as staff, we haven't had conversations with Clyde companies about the city footing the bill necessarily to construct services out here. So I think the concept more is that, and I think Springville is being sympathetic for the situation that this property owner is in, because they have made a huge investment to provide utility service at the doorstep of these properties. And with those utilities that are in place or that are being constructed now, they can serve that. Now, if these properties have to be developed in Springville, that would mean developing a redundant second set of infrastructure out into the area, not likely at Springville's expense.
Sure.
They would require
someone else.
Private development to do that.
So we have ours are closer for the development to tie into.
Timeline.
Today.
Yeah. We're not adding anything. Our citizens aren't bearing the cost of this.
Right.
Because our services exist, and it's more efficient for them to tie into what we have. Yes?
Much more efficient.
Okay.
100% more
And
efficient.
quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would add to that we're not talking about changing the typical model here at all, which is that development constructs utilities,
Sure.
they build roads and all of that type of a thing. Logically speaking, for me, this is it's a pretty simple question.
We've serviced this area already. It's easier to connect here than it is to connect all the way across the freeway.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I don't get out of the office a lot. And I don't know if you've had a chance to get up into this area in the past few
Different
months,
than it was
weeks.
a few years ago.
It's changed a bunch, and the utility work continues to happen along here, and there are plans to extend that further to the west. So it's just getting that much more ready as the days go by.
Okay. Thank you.
That other pointer. Sorry.
The western boundary on this is set based on property owners that have asked for it?
Precisely, yes. Yep. And this also, at least it closely coincides with what can be served today by a lift station that's been constructed right there. As we go further to the west, should that ever happen, then likely certainly at some point, another lift station would need to be constructed. So, whether this is as far west as councils decide to expand the boundary for the next year or 5 years or 20 years, we feel comfortable that this is an area that we can serve with what's planned for today.
I'm going to say this, so I'm going to say it anyway. I hate doing these one-offs like this. To me, this is a holistic, this should have been a part of a holistic plan of where we're going to grow, why we're going to grow there. But it sounds like the Planning Commission went through that process pretty rigorously about the why. It is 500 plus acres, so it's not necessarily that small one-off like a lot. So that makes me a little bit more comfortable, and I appreciate the Planning Commission going through the process and the steps to make a logical decision about why they make this recommendation. So
I understand your point there, but at the same time, it's difficult to wrap this all into some larger plan when Springville, through years and years and years, have already had it as part of their plan, right? So we're not going to include it in part of ours until property owners actually approach both cities and say, hey, can we change this?
yeah, I see the difficulty here, and I think that's part of the mitigating circumstances for me to be somewhat okay with it. But to redefine the annexation policy boundary is a large decision, something that should be taken into a broader context. It just so happens this is very, very large context, right? It's 500 acres, and there is some mitigating circumstances. So I'm not necessarily opposed. I would rather have talked about this in a bigger picture. That's not how it got to us, but
to Shane,
that I'm going to say that,
For
right?
sure. And
it's just I hate one-offs, and we have a general plan update coming.
That's what I was going to say.
It's probably not conducive to wait to that point, but we need to get to that as quickly as possible so that we don't one-off this.
Because based off of this now and what you're saying,
why stop? Where do we stop? Yeah.
And I think that has to be a part of our general plan study, right? Like, it has to be taken into account. If we haven't made annexation plan changes in 30 years, now's the time. Let's make those look.
That's one of the bigger things.
Let's figure it out.
Yep.
I think that'd be a great, we have a joint planning commission city council meeting coming up in May. I think maybe might be 5 minutes is all, or 10 minutes to kind of talk about that. That'd be helpful. Let me just say, I'm not trying to be unduly agreeable, but we sat down as staff after you had initially reviewed the annexation proposal for the 320 acres to have a conversation about, okay, so what should an annexation policy amendment look like? And I think all of us in that conversation started out thinking that it would make sense to consider a much larger area. And it was probably about 90 minutes worth of conversation that simply led to us coming up with more reasons to take this kind of an incremental chunk at this point in time than to go bigger. So I think this wasn't probably the recommendation that we thought we'd be making at the onset, but primarily, like I said, we know what we're working with here, I think is the best way to put it for now, and we wanted to leave it at that.
Yeah. 3 property owners.
Yeah.
they're all agreeable. Yeah, circumstances line up. I get it. Just let's get to the plan review. Let's get that going.
Gotcha. Can't come fast enough.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions up here? I think it is considerable to geographically utilities to cross a creek, even though it's dry creek. It's not Spanish Fork River. Yeah, and it's not ever dry. Going out to Utah Lake would be a considerable thing to get utilities under there. So that's a huge component of us being here rather than someone else being here, I think. Okay, any other questions, comments from the council up here? If not, I'd entertain a motion on item 8D.
I move to approve the ordinance annexation policy plan amendment with the 4 findings in the staff report.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Euler, seconded by Councilwoman Beck. A roll call vote here. Councilman Argyle.
Yes.
Councilman Cardin.
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck.
Yes.
Councilman Marshall.
Yes.
And Councilman Euler.
Yes.
Item 8D is approved. Okay. Takes us to 9, new business. We still good, or anybody needs a break? We powering through? We're good?
Right.
Okay. 9A, appointment of Jesse Cardin to the Spanish Fork City Personnel Committee. This would be awkward if we didn't appoint him with him being here.
Shane's probably going to vote no anyway.
Shane.
This is my only no for the week.
Councilman Cardin is taking the place of Councilman, now Commissioner Gordon. He was on the Personnel Committee that meets, Jordan, do you know how many times a year does the Personnel Committee meet? This is a Tyler Jacobson question.
It's about quarterly.
Quarterly, I think.
Okay. So, are you okay to meet quarterly with the Personnel Committee of the city?
It's a shock when I saw it on the agenda.
Well, if you're not, we'll find somebody else.
I'm definitely voting yes.
Shane, you need a couple more meetings to go to.
I would entertain a motion approving the appointment of one Councilman Cardin to the Spanish Fork City Personnel Committee.
Does he need to recuse himself?
Probably right. I don't know, Tara. That's a choice for you.
Motion to approve Jesse Cardin to the Spanish Fork Personnel Committee.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Argyle, seconded by Councilman Marshall. Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
Councilman Euler?
Yes.
Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilman Cardin?
Yes. I guess.
Or abstain, whatever you want to do.
I don't know if there's a reason to.
Did
but
we have
it's
to
all
do
right.
this, Tara, when we all were appointed to different boards? So why are we doing it?
We forgot him.
Huh?
We were short on the Personnel Committee. That was a mayor mistake. That
No,
we
but I
didn't-
just didn't know we
For other
had to go
committees.
through a roll call vote to be on different committees.
We were appointed.
Are you making this up, Mayor?
I'm not making this up. It was
You
on the,
belong
it
then.
was on the agenda, and I got a call from Tyler Jacobson that said, "You really don't want Brandon Gordon coming to our Personnel Committee meeting?" And I said, "No."
Okay.
And he said, "Then we got to clean that up." So there's your cleanup, Jesse. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Item 9B, 2023 mayoral proclamation concerning Arbor Day. There he is.
Yes, sir.
Bill, you can come speak to this, or are we just making a proclamation?
I'd like to announce it.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. April 28th, 9:30 a.m., we're going to be at Parkside Estates Park. We're going to have Arbor Day. Canyon Elementary School will be in attendance. They'll have about 80 students there, and plus their teachers and parents. We should have a great program. We're going to be planting 8 trees there. Some of the trees in that park have died, and we're going to put some more trees in place. We're pretty excited about it, so we'd like to make that announcement to everybody in town. The 28th, Friday, 9:30 a.m., Parkside Estates Park. Do we need the address on that?
Yeah, I don't know that that's, it's not here.
I can give it over the...
1480 South Spanish, 1221 East, 1480 South.
That's it, 1221 East, 1480 South. It's kind of a little pocket park in the middle of that subdivision there. So any questions on that?
You're going to go do a tutorial for Shane of how to use a shovel. He's not...
Happy to.
He's a little
He needs
past
some really thick gloves. Those hands haven't seen work.
I think he can probably know his way around a shovel pretty good.
We'll see.
Yeah, we're telling everybody bring your shovels.
Bring your shovel.
We have the kids plant the trees. We kind of get them in the ground first, fill them up about halfway, and then they throw the rest of the dirt in, and we stomp it in place. So it'll be fun. The kids have a good time with it. This will be the first time we've had Canyon Elementary School.
Awesome.
So that'll be fun. This is our 24th year that we've had Arbor Day officially. So we're starting to stack in the decades there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. So I don't know if you need to read that entire mayoral proclamation.
Is that what it is?
The whole thing?
Hey, I read a book this year. I already told you. I can do this.
How about we move over to the library and you can do it like off the
I can do this.
balcony?
I got this.
Like just to the whole
Let's
city.
hear your best narrating voice.
Bill, I can't say enough about what the job you've done in keeping us a tree city and celebrating Arbor Day. Beautiful trees around the city, and it's a credit to you and your department taking care of them and reminding little rugrats during the summer to not climb on them. Right? Give them a chance. Give them a chance to grow.
Make sure they don't be climbing us.
Yeah.
Until they're bigger. Not even that.
Yeah. Just sit under the shade of them, right? Okay, so mayoral proclamation concerning Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewal resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of our business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And now, therefore, I, Mike Mendenhall, Mayor of the City of Spanish Fork, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 28th, 2023, as Arbor Day in the City of Spanish Fork, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. We need a motion and a second and a roll call vote to accept that proclamation.
I move to approve the 2023 mayoral proclamation concerning Arbor Day.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Cardin, seconded by Councilman Argyle. Roll call vote. Councilwoman Beck.
Yes.
Councilman Marshall.
Yes.
Councilman Euler.
Yes.
Councilman Cardin.
Yes.
And Councilman Argyle.
Yes.
That's approved.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Bill.
Bill?
Nebraska. Did you shed a tear a little bit, Dave, when Nebraska's? I didn't know Nebraska was.
Is that because of their football team, or?
Yeah, that's good.
When you're that bad, you shed a tear.
I felt like in the flood year, we could have, since Jared's here, we could have added something about trees coming down the river. They're beautiful, but we're trying to prevent it. We're just taking the dead ones. Yep, we're just taking the dead ones. Okay, item C, fence height approval request for 80 West, 200 South in town.
Yes.
We can only issue permits for fences that are taller than 6 feet with the council's approval. So in this case, home located at 80 West, 200 South. Along this particular part of their boundary line right there, the property owner would like to construct an 8-foot tall fence. It'd be a tan vinyl fence, I believe vertical kind of slats, nothing particularly unique in that regard. She was kind enough to provide her reasoning for wanting to have a taller fence there, and I'll maybe just let that stand. But staff certainly has no concerns with this particular situation, having an 8-foot tall fence.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. There's a fence there now, but this is just increasing the height of it.
I believe there's a
there's
fence
no
there
fence.
now. Is
I
there?
don't think there's a fence there.
No.
Not a fence.
Nothing.
There's 6-foot pieces, just panels, and then there are a lot of bushes and trees that are just recently being taken out. So,
No buffer.
Not a full fence.
not a full fence.
Okay.
Not a fence. Okay.
Not a fence.
I agree.
Thank you.
I think it needs an 8-foot fence with all the things you described
Good
going on
reason.
there. So thank you.
Yep.
Should we pass it and move along?
Yep.
Okay.
Councilman
I
Marshall's
move to
got it.
approve the fence height
I'm not gonna
approval
say-
request for Becky
Wait.
Bandley. No.
Just for the record,
No. Oh,
Yes.
Why do you need to make record
because
things?
that's our job. I agree with you all. Yes, I think there needs to be an
Okay,
8-foot
so
fence.
you're seconding it.
I will second it for you, yes. And I'm going to say why. The distance between, the setback there is very, very small. The fact that you can climb out a window and get over the fence at the same time. We should have an 8-foot fence there. So the next time this happens, we can be consistent on why we said yes and not just arbitrarily say yes to 6-foot fences or 8-foot fences. Like, you could probably change your ordinance that this could be allowed for an 8-foot fence.
By way of and for me, it's distinct land use there too.
Absolutely.
Right? Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Did you make a motion?
I did.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Just kidding. That's it.
That's all right. You were good.
She's going to read for you tonight, do motions for you.
That is why she's the mayor pro tem. She's good at that stuff. Motion made by Councilwoman Beck, seconded by Councilman Marshall with the commentary. And this is a roll call vote. Councilman Cardon?
Yes.
Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
And Councilman Euler?
Yes.
Item 9C is approved. Thank you.
With the commentary.
With the commentary, yep, it's in the minutes.
Gallery.
Becky?
Okay.
Becky, are you going to build are you going to build it? You're going to. Well, I know that.
The look.
It's probably the same fence we used to jump over to get to IGA, so it's probably not changed. Yeah. Okay. That will be nicer for your pool and stuff.
Very much safer.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for hanging with us. Appreciate it. Takes us to 9D, annexation acceptance, GWC number 320.
Thank you. This is back again for acceptance because it's expanded from the 320 acres to include what we've already talked about tonight, the 535 acres. So this would reinitiate a process to study the area and to initiate a protest period, provide notice for that and the like. And should the council accept this for further study this evening, we would guess that this would then be back on your agenda sometime in June, as we would have gone through that process, taken it to the Planning Commission. And in June, it would be on your agenda for consideration on the annexation with a public hearing. And staff's recommendation hasn't changed from what we made back with just the 320 acres. We recommend that this proposal be accepted for further study.
So, Dave, in the first finding, or the recommendation says that the proposed annexation be approved. We're not approving an annexation.
Yeah, that is correct. That is.
Okay. I think the motion is probably accurate. It says approve for annexation acceptance. I was confused.
Yeah, the wording's.
Why we weren't in public hearing, but okay. If it's just acceptance for study. Okay.
So now, my question, is this any different? He talked about a one-off, but it was a 500 off. This says 320. Is this a different outline than the 500 acres?
So we need to talk about maybe changing the name. That the name of the annexation proposal
was 320.
It was 320 because of the acreage, right?
But it's grown.
My daughter was born on March 20th.
Seriously? That would have really sent me for a loop. But, so the 320 now is just nomenclature.
Okay.
This has 535 acres included in it.
Okay.
To match the annexation policy amendment that we talked about earlier.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions for Dave or anybody on this one? The next step from a step we took on in the last section.
Then there would be a public hearing with us, but not with the Planning Commission in this one, right?
Okay, I'd entertain a motion on item 9D.
I move to approve the annexation acceptance, GWC 320.
Motion made by Councilman Euler.
Second.
Seconded by a tie goes to the elder, Councilman Argyle. I don't know.
Senior.
Senior works. Yep. So roll call vote. Councilman Euler?
Yes.
Councilman Cardon?
Yes.
Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
And Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
Item 9D is approved. Takes us to 9E, Eagle Haven Master Plan Development Preliminary Plat Amendment Approval Request.
Once again, thank you. Subject property in this case is located south and east of Maple Mountain High School on the east side of Spanish Fork Parkway. This proposal involves expanding the existing Eagle Haven master plan development, which today I believe has 19 lots that would be expanded with the addition of 7 additional lots. Subject properties currently are not zoned R16. It's been zoned R115 here since the properties were annexed, which happened 12 or 13 years ago. The proposal is to have the project approved as a master plan development. The applicant's done some things to help ensure that we are able to develop a well-functioning local street network. We think that's ample justification to have it approved as a master plan development here. So not that we've taken this as just being routine or too light, but pretty straightforward. And with an average lot size of greater than 15,000 square feet, I personally really appreciate a proposal that adds to our inventory. We were going through our numbers earlier today of lots that we have available for construction now in Spanish Fork, and it's low. It's really low. So particularly lots that are a little bit larger like these will be a great addition, I think, to what we have in the community. And this has been reviewed both by the Belton Review Committee and the Planning Commission, and they've recommended that it be approved.
So this is the piece of ground to the north of this.
Yeah. So the original
just the bottom
Cove is everything south of this line right here. So you can drive out there today. This is all constructed.
Okay.
And
that one home is existing.
This one home here is existing.
And it's staying?
It's staying. So it'll front onto that street there. It faces to the south right now. And in some regards, this is about as easy as it gets, really.
So it drops, obviously it drops a little bit right here north of this road. They'll just have to fill that in, or what are their plans there? So
they'll have to fill it in. Generally speaking, we like driveways that slope to the street,
down,
not to the garage and that type of thing.
Driveway. Yeah, because it's a pretty significant.
It is, yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming I don't know what you call them, the sub-lot signs that are out front will change, because right now it's showing a different plan on that front of this side.
Possibly.
Yeah, okay.
I can't speak for that.
Cool, yeah.
I like it.
Looks better.
Close to Jesse. He's been riding his bike on those new paved roads.
I was going to say, this is where we watched the elk all winter, this is where they've been hanging out, so we get to clean that up, right?
Over by the highway.
Well, it depends on where they're at during the day. They've been over there in the neighborhood.
Okay, any other questions, comments for staff on item 9E? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the proposed preliminary plat be approved based on the following, or the attached, do I have to read them all, or can I just say the attached findings?
That works great.
Okay, the attached findings and conditions.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Cardin, seconded by Councilwoman Beck. Roll call vote. Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
Councilman Euler?
Yes.
Councilman Cardin?
Yes.
9E is approved. Takes us to 9F, 630 West Center Street Construction Management, CMGC, GMP with Kenny Sane Construction. Mr. Jared Johnson.
KSC.
Okay, this is for the CMGC, which is a construction management general contractor, and the guaranteed maximum price with Kenny Sang. We actually went out to CMGC on this one probably 6 months ago. It was a long time ago. And the reason why we went to CMGC on this project is because it's a joint project with the school district, with the school being built, and then SFCN is also being built, and Kenny Sang is both a contractor for the school district and Hogan Construction. So it made a lot of sense to work with the same contractor to actually widen 630 West to 5 lanes, put a traffic signal in, and then rebuild the irrigation structure. So if you've been down in that area, 630 West has been closed for a couple weeks trying to get that irrigation structure built before irrigation season. Kenny Sing's done a great job with getting everything done, tied in with that, and then we've actually started working on widening the road. The traffic signal's been procured, and the actual materials being It's at UDOT. It'll be powder coated black, and then it'll be sent to the site. So what you have before you now is a guaranteed maximum price. I got my phone because my computer died.
Hey, Jared, when we move, the floors won't squeak.
Sorry, didn't notice that.
I didn't either.
I think it's just you.
No, it's everybody that goes up there. Don't make him feel bad.
Rude.
Babe.
They'll speak at some point, or they'll squeak at some point. You might
30
still-
years, maybe?
Yeah, you might still be elected by then.
There have been a lot of people standing there, right? That's how.
Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah.
That's right. Talk about some history.
How do you know that floor doesn't squeak?
That's what I'm saying. It could.
I think now we're all going to notice it. That's all we're going to do.
No, everyone's going to be self-conscious when they come up here. Thanks.
So the guaranteed, let's get so back to the guaranteed maximum price. The guaranteed maximum price is $1,306,000 and $507.54 if you got in your. We have the engineer's estimate, which is just over that cost. And then I wanted to point out the school district's donating $250,000, and that's actual for the traffic signal. The rest work was done by us to widen the road, and it's a future 5-lane road all the way to from Center Street to Main Street. So,
Jared, do we know when those lights will be up and running?
hopefully by the end of this summer. So.
You really could just tell us Kenny Singh has became our four-corner improvement.
Yeah, they've
entire city.
Well, they've actually won all the bids we put out too. We've hired them for multiple CMGC jobs. The next one is another CMGC job. It's Kenny Singh. We've also hired Geneva Rock though, and other companies, but they meet the deadlines.
And they do good work.
They do awesome work.
And they're coming in under the engineer's estimate as well. So, I mean, all those things add up to a good project.
Yeah, we hire them on. They help us plan it. They help us come up with the ideas on what we're going to do with the irrigation structure. They've been on board since we've 30% plan. So they've helped us design the plan, help us come up with the cheaper solution, and then we work with the best product.
I think
and get
too,
it done on time.
What's really important about this process is you don't have to select them at the end. They've helped you all that way.
Right.
If they couldn't come under the engineer's estimate, you would just bid this out to somebody else. So
Correct.
it's not
They come in-
guaranteed for them at all. But we put together a bid, they put together a bid, they work out so that it makes sense. And
Yeah, if that's their bid, and if it's underneath the engineer, or if it's over the engineer's estimate by a certain amount, then we certainly hold them as that bid, and then we put it out to bid. And so, that's correct. The next one is
Just down the road.
Do this one first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, item 9F, if there's any other questions or comments, say them now. But if not,
I move to approve the 630 West Center Street Construction Management General Contract Guaranteed Maximum Price with Kenny Singh.
Second.
motion made by Councilman Marshall, seconded by Councilman Euler. Roll call vote. Councilman Euler.
Yes.
Councilman Cardon.
Yes.
Councilman Argyle.
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck.
Yes.
And Councilman Marshall.
Yes.
Item 9F is approved. Takes us to 9G, 400 North and 300 West roundabout construction.
This is a different project, the same process, CMGC, guaranteed maximum price with Kenny Singh. We hired this same company right about the exact same time we did 630 West. Another good reason we hired Kenny Singh to do both is they can handle the traffic control for both projects and not direct traffic into each other. Because once we shut down 400 North after school shuts down, then everything's going to have to go down 630 West. And so it's one detour into another. You're detouring one job into another construction zone. Tyler's been really great. He's going to make sure traffic works, and we'll make sure traffic's open. But 400 North, 300 West will be shut down for the most part of the summer.
Oh.
To get it constructed. But
Makes
we
sense.
want to shut down while school's out, not while school's
Get
open.
it.
Yeah.
So
What else we can do?
This summer's going to be interesting.
Yes, it will be.
every summer's just getting better.
Yeah.
This one's the exact opposite, though. So the engineer's estimate is actually below the GMP, but I did get a new GMP just emailed to me after this was on City Council, and Kenny Singh has got it down to $1,993,838. And so we're still above it, but working with Kenny saying there's a lot of unknowns with this job, and it's with the irrigation structure that actually runs down Third West. And so we can't get squash pipe. We're going to build a box culvert over the top of the existing structure. And if the existing structure is in better shape than we think it's going to be, then this will be considerably less. But we are over the engineer's estimate, but we're within that 5% range.
So just what you said before, 300 west and 400 north will both be closed while this is under construction?
Just that intersection.
Just that intersection.
So the detours, I mean, 400 north, there's a lot of traffic up and over the freeway, not just in our city. So will there
it
be...
won't be shut down the whole time. It'll just be shut down for probably a good 3 weeks. But we got to build a water line. So we got to replace the water lines. We got to replace the irrigation structures. And all the storm water. So they'll work on one side and detour traffic as much as they can, but at a certain point they will shut it down, construct it, and build it.
Where will that detour to?
6th West?
From 4th Northeast, you'll detour down 630 West and over to Center Street, and then around, you'll go, is it 5th North? It's right by Brockbank.
Yeah,
5th North.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question on the detour, because we've gotten some emails about this, right, with big trucks that use 4th and whatnot. If they're asked to detour down 630, you've got those 2 speed bumps. And what's the possibility we can get those removed before we detour there?
Well, that's where my question was going, is if you can get detour signs before coming over the freeway.
Before they even get to there.
You could get them going north and then coming under the freeway.
At 1050 West.
At 1050. Instead of, I forgot before I came over.
Yeah.
And then you got some trucks.
Yeah, and then what do you do with the big truck once it's
in the neighborhood? It's got to go. Yeah. So I think I'm no engineer, but I think
Good plan.
That.
I like that.
But the detour signs should be out in the fields too.
We'll get with Kenny saying and make sure that detours. Yeah, I honestly forgot about the bumps on 630 West. Maybe this is a good time to remove them.
Oh, definitely.
Yep.
I've been thinking
get them gone.
I've driven up.
My kids will be sad.
You went a little bit slower.
You like those bumps?
They love going fast. They love it when I go fast.
Wait a second.
Wait, did I say that out loud?
Borrow my van, Kevin, one day, put them clear in the back, and then
do it.
That'll solve that.
I miss the old bump.
Chief Johnson's going to just set up shop there.
I miss the dip. Yeah, I missed the dip on 3rd. That was fun.
Terrible.
That's a deep. It's horrible.
One other point to add is UDOT's contributing $350,000 to this. This is the $2 million for this job is not just for the roundabout. There is water lines will be replaced. We're going to replace all the water lines in the area. They're old and get them replaced while we're doing it, both in this project and 630 West. So.
MAG project?
Nope.
Not a MAG project? Okay. Any other questions for Jared on this one? Okay, if not, I'd entertain a motion for 9G.
I'll move to approve the 400 North, 300 West roundabout CMGC guaranteed maximum price with Kenny Sink Construction.
Second.
You don't want to put my good idea in the motion? You just want, okay.
Duly noted.
Motion made by Councilman Marshall, seconded by Councilman Argyle. A roll call vote. Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
Councilman Cardon?
Yes.
Councilman Euler?
Yes.
9G is approved. Takes us to 9H, Cemetery Landscape Line Trimming Agreement.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. At the cemetery, a little history. Last year we had a very difficult time getting seasonal workers. Usually they're the ones that do the line trimming at the cemetery. As you can imagine, it's a massive job. We have about 13,000 stones up there. So it takes a lot of work. We usually had 3 kids trimming for the entire week, 8 hours a day. So we could not get even a single application last year, so we decided to go out to contract on that and see if we could go out to bid and get a contract on it. So Truco came in for a 22-week contract at about $58,000 last year, and we accepted that. This year we decided we needed to get a little earlier start Again, we're having trouble getting any kind of seasonal workers. It worked out so well last year, we didn't want to change it up. So it's a 26-week contract for this year, and it's $71,207. Now, where do we get the money for that? We just changed the money that was in the budget for employees, for the seasonal workers, and we moved it into this budget last year. We're doing the same thing this year. So we're asking that you approve that contract with Truco Landscaping for 26-week line trimming of the cemetery for $71,207 and some odd cents. 76.76. Any questions on that?
Yeah, you've asked. There's a lower bid, right?
A what?
There's a lower bid. Brightline was lower.
$227 lower, a company we're not familiar with. We also had a second bid that was
crazy high.
So $224,000 for that.
I get why you want to, and I understand that completely. Do we have a process to accept the non-low bid?
I had the same question. I just noticed that. Did we do a request for proposals or an invitation for bid?
So we solicited bids by making phone. We called them on it.
I'm not aware that we have an option if you did it that way.
Sorry, I was reading my next agenda. What'd you bid out?
Travis is giving you all looks that he wants to hear what's being discussed.
So bids were put out for trimming around the headstones at the cemetery, looking for companies to come in that we could hire out to do that rather than seasonal work because we can't get the employees to do it. We received 3 bids. The bid that is being discussed is the one that they want to accept is $200+ higher than the lowest bid. So the question is, can we do that, or are we required by law to take the lowest bid?
So you didn't put it out for RFP, you just solicited bids.
Right.
So there'd have to be a reason. I mean, it'd have to be.
As far as I know, there's no reason.
You have to have a finding of some sort, right?
Yeah.
The reason we have is that
Are they non-responsive, or are they?
Like the schedule, they can't meet the schedule, or.
the only reason we have right now that I know of is that we used this Truco last year, and they were very successful.
That's great. This other company might be too. There's no reason to suspect they won't be.
True.
So it's the positive side of the company that we have experience with now could be used if the RFP process is used.
If you do an RFP with different criteria that you evaluate, it's not solely based on price, you can do that. But it sounds like that's not what
The process he used
What
was
you
so.
could
Just a
do-
bid.
What you could do is reject all bids and rebid. Do a new process, an RFP process. If you want to go that route.
What's your time frame like in getting?
We were wanting to get
done
started
with
actually this Friday, 21st.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
So, Jared, is that something your department can help Bill with if it's a rejection and get RFP out and shorten the window of time frame they have to?
Can Brightview start
submit
this Friday?
Or can Brightview?
Who put the bid out for you?
Justin, the sexton, he made the phone calls to everybody. We contacted 5 different companies and 3 submitted proposals.
The downside of rejecting and having people resubmit, now they know they chose numbers.
Could Brightview start on
Be an
Friday?
upside.
Yeah, well, they all know the numbers now, right? Is that what you said? Okay.
With the turnaround, could Brightview start Friday?
That I don't know. We have not had any more communication with Brightview.
You're recommending we don't approve this, and we.
Yeah, well, the 2 things. You could don't approve it tonight, rebid, or redo a request for proposals, or award it to
Okay.
I mean, if the low bidder can't do it and start immediately, then that would be
Yeah, if they
reason
can't
to
start-
say,
if
okay,
they can't
we
meet the schedule,
won't
then-
use you.
Right.
So we need to continue this?
Well, then do you recommend we contact them and see if they can start on Friday?
Find out if they can meet the schedule. If not, then you can award it to the next lowest bidder.
Does that need to come back before us if you award it to the
I think
second?
If you craft your motion that you award it to the lowest bidder if they can meet the schedule, if not, then the next lowest bidder.
Okay.
Are you good with that, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with Vaughn. We have no reason to question whether or not Brightview could do it. We're not familiar with them, and we're very familiar with TrueCall because of what they did last year.
Just practice it for the future. I mean, it's not worth $200, right? Like, if you've got a great experience with this one, that's why sometimes it's best to do different procurement processes.
Yeah, I see that now.
You have some other factors to weigh, and price isn't the most important factor. Always, it's one factor.
Right.
And if the motion's crafted that way, it doesn't need to come back up here for ratification in another meeting or something?
You can approve it with the low bidder as long as they can meet the schedule. If not, then you can work with the next list bidder.
Okay. Okay. You all right with that, Bill?
Absolutely.
Okay. Got your orders? Anybody would like to make a motion? I think you should. Or, yeah.
You spoke up. Go for it.
Move to approve the cemetery landscape line trimming agreement with Brightview, pending they can meet scheduling of beginning this Friday. Otherwise, that the bid goes to the second in line. Does that sound?
I just got a message from Seth.
Okay.
He says you'd rather reject this or continue it rather, and he would direct Dale and Bart to follow the purchasing policy.
Okay, so just continue it. Okay. We'll let Parks and Rec follow up on it and handle it. Okay. I move that we continue this.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Euler, seconded by Councilman Marshall to continue this item. Roll call vote. Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
Councilman Cardin?
Yes.
Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
Councilman Euler?
Yes.
I changed it up there. Okay, that item is continued. Thank you, Bill.
We'll get back to you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that takes us to item 10A, Airport Taxiway Reconstruction FAA Grant.
So we recently put the taxiway reconstruction project out to bid for this summer. The bids all came in about $700,000 higher than what we had budgeted. So we went back to the FAA and received more funding. And so what we're asking here is there's no real action item because we haven't got the documents back from the FAA yet, but our construction season's shortening. So we're asking that if we're going to have these documents by the end of this week, and we're asking if the mayor can sign these documents, and they're the granting documents with the FAA to increase the grant by $700,000 so we can get the project going, and then we'll bring the actual documents back in May so we can start construction this week.
So you're asking us to let Mike sign something that allows us to take more money?
To get more money.
Oh, okay.
Not spend more money, receive more money.
Just receive more.
It's a lot to ask.
No way.
Yes. We've already signed the original grant
You need a motion or
documents.
just?
No, I just need
Just discussion.
Yep. Go for it.
An important taxiway, especially for how the airport's expanding and the jets that are now coming in.
Yeah.
You need to get it improved so we can race on it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Chad can take his ban up
$4.2
over
million
it.
project. So
It's a big deal.
Thank you,
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Okay, if there's no other,
Yes, I have
there is
something.
other business before we adjourn to closed session.
Yes, after talking to the mayor and council members, if I can instruct Dave Anderson's department to relook at the ordinance, it's 15-4-16-130. Is that how I tell you the code, the ordinance? Okay. And it's about landscaping, buffering walls, and fences with residential lots over 200 feet in the front and 20,000 feet.
Square feet
Square
size.
feet. Looking at if it would make sense to take that down to 17,000, 18,000, 15,000, just some of those things that resident has asked you about. Can we put that charge on you? Okay, thank you.
Do we need a
we
motion? Do we need a motion?
You don't need a motion, just directing staff. Okay. All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Beck. Now I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
There's no closed session.
Fantastic. Okay, I will not entertain that motion. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Argyle, second by Councilman Cardon. Roll call vote. Councilman Cardon?
Yes.
Councilman Argyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Beck?
Yes.
Councilman Marshall?
Yes.
Councilman Euler?
Yes.
We're adjourned. Thanks for joining us.